right, here we go. Here we go. And boom! Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Hash Church. Good morning. Hash Church 2020. This is Hash Church 3.0, episode 2. And I'm going to send out the links to our panelists, see if they can't make the journey over this way. Let's just get these sent. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. All right, look at that. Nice and quick, Mama. Nice and quick. I'm not even sure how you did that so quick, but I will add the new Hash Church to the old link. I'm sure everyone else has done it already, but let's see when we get some friends in visiting. What's up? What's up, Jan Big Time Inc., El Babi, Kevin Jimenez, Family Outcast, David P. Chapman, and Hemp Guy. Thanks for showing up, Hemp Guy.
Do you hear me?
I hear you beautifully. How about that? And Wade Laughter's in the house, and I can see him. That's nice. Good to see you, buddy. Skunkman Sam and Wade are the first 2 guys into the room today. We had less of a plan today. Last week I had a little bit of a discussion with people, and we kind of had an idea what we were going to talk about, and there was a good 10 plus people that had responded that they were going to be coming in, and today was really it was kind of last minute. I really sort of hit people up with an email just yesterday. So I'm not sure how many people we're going to get in, but either way, I'm down with talking for as long as it goes. And great to see you both here in Hash Church with me.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, you're looking good, man. You got your camera all operational?
Finally figured it out. Almost by accident, but yeah.
How's your back doing?
It's good. It's
getting better?
Yeah, I'm not ever going to roll big diesel engines over again.
Yeah.
Or hump big rounds of oak. But yeah, I'm able to do lightweight farming. And last time I saw my grandkids, I was able to pick them up. So
blessings.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting as a man growing older and just slowly losing the ability to do certain things, right?
It's a big challenge, Marcus. It really is.
Well, because we don't feel older.
No,
like in our
I
brains.
Feel like a kid. I still feel like a kid.
Of course.
But yeah, I look in the mirror and it's like, who the hell is that guy? And yeah, when I'm out on the farm and there's a big tree has fallen and I want to drag it out of the way so I can keep going on what I'm doing, and I can't do it. I got to go ask somebody else to help me. It's a real challenge for somebody who's used to being able to do whatever the hell he wants.
Well, I discovered it. I mean, I'm not quite there yet, but at 47, a couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago, I destroyed myself on my dirt bike. And I really damaged an inside part of my leg and my lower back. And there's Allison Maria, the girls in green.
Hey.
What's going on, girls in green?
Hi, what's up?
Good. Welcome to Hash Church. It's so good to have you both. I don't know if you guys know Wade or Skunkman Sam or if they know you, but welcome. I want to introduce you guys to both of these guys. And these girls are great. I met them fairly recently. We got to hang out in Jamaica for a while, right? Like we did about a week. And these are some serious hash aficionado women in the room right now, which I have a real fondness for and an appreciation for. And they're incredible activists. They're from Brazil, but they've been traveling around. And I kind of want you guys, if you can, to maybe give a little history of yourselves, how you guys got into cannabis and where it sort of led you in these last couple of years, because I really dig what you guys are doing.
First of all, I would just like to say it is an honor to be here. Because, I mean, at least I can say for myself, when I fell in love with all this hash making world, like I used to watch the Hash Church like a long, long time ago. So it is an honor to be here today together with Maria and you all, and I'm super grateful and happy.
Thank you guys for having us, actually. I haven't known Hash Church for as long as Alice, but since I've known it, I've seen that it's like amazing that putting so many people together in a chat room can make different conversations come like unexpectedly and everyone giving in their opinion. So I think it's a very, very, very effective and new way of doing communication in internet, and it's an honor to be
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you both. And, you know, one of the things I love that you guys are doing is that you're sort of, you know, Brazil is this incredible country. It just has these incredible people. It has this incredible terroir. I've never been able to visit, but I'm going to absolutely get down there now that I've got some great Brazilian friends. And what I like about it, you know, Brazil is almost cut off in a sense that the people speak Portuguese and a lot of people don't speak English. So the information of cannabis really is not as accessible to the majority of the people as it maybe should be. And so this is why I started with Yao, with the Ganja Talks University, to try and, you know, do a little thing where he would translate everything into Portuguese, and then I could help educate some of the Brazilian people. But you guys have taken it a way step further in the sense that, you know, you guys have really good English as a second language. You're out in the world. I've seen you guys in like California working on grows in Humboldt and trimming plants and growing plants. And so I love that you guys are out there doing that and then bringing that back consistently. 9 out of 10 times when I see you guys post, it's in Portuguese and I can't understand it, but it makes me feel happy that all of those other people can understand it. So great job on that.
There's a bunch of information in English for sure, and you really reached one of the most important things of our work, which is like getting all this information that we have the privilege to get in touch with outside with our travels, with like me living also in California, and then translating it in a simple language for Brazilians, because we do have a huge country and we do have a bunch of stoners in Brazil. Especially with cannabis, this would be like an amazing and huge market. So,
and is there a lot of hashish in Brazil? And if there is it imported or is it made in Brazil?
No, actually, okay. So Brazil has more or less 210 million people. I would say I have no idea how much % of the population actually smokes, but of the population that does smoke, 80%, I would guess, like, but it's a good guess, smokes something that probably you guys, if you're all in Canada, don't know if you have seen, but it's like brickweed
from Paraguay. That one from the like, I don't know, 80s or 70s, I don't even know.
So no, unfortunately, the answer is like, there is hash. Yes, there is. So for those of us who like it and
have the privilege to buy it, have a connection. Honestly, guys, do you think that we just went to Humboldt like straight up like that? No, we knew where the hash was coming from. And then we reached out for where it was coming from. Okay, let's go to Humboldt then, learn to make some hash.
Right, so how did you guys get started on your sort of hash path? Because you guys are hardcore. Like when I bumped into you guys in Jamaica, you guys had all the kind resins, you know, like light colored and amber colored, and like you guys are connoisseurs. Like not everyone I bump into pulls out like the straight fire. They're like, oh, do you want to hit some of this? Like I have this and I have this, and they got their Puffco everywhere. I'm usually that guy. I'm usually the only guy walking around.
No, I know. Here, just so you know, Marcos, this is the cookies and cream that I'm eating. Same one as you hit it.
Oh yeah, the cookies and cream. That was delicious. Absolutely.
Sauce Winery, if he's watching, Flynn, also like a strain who has been growing for a long while. Dino's Cut, so much love to this dude too. And I mean, Maria, if you want to start talking a bit about the story, I'm gonna hit up the Puffco now.
I'm gonna hit my bong up while I listen to Maria talk about the story.
We have like, I think that Girls in Green started because we are good friends for like a while now. And we were like cannabis aficionados, actually. And we started growing. She started growing with her boyfriends. I went to live in Barcelona and I started going a lot to strain hunters and like met the guys there. And like they started teaching me so much. And we were like exchanging pictures every day. And then we said, okay, let's just go on Instagram and find out more about cannabis. And both of us from the start loved smoking hash. I smoked tobacco a lot. So for me, it was like a getaway from tobacco, from like smoking Marlboros.
Marcus doesn't like that.
Yeah, but it is.
He never smokes or spliffs.
But it's like, and then starting to know more, and then Alice went to California and started trimming. So she started teaching Girls in Green a lot, and then we started the process that Marcus said of translating so much for the Brazilian culture.
But we were already doing some experiments. Like the other day, actually, when we were in Jamaica, I showed Marcus, like, first time we watched like bubble hash here was like 2015 or 2014 with his bags, and I was like, look at this shitty hash Marcos here. Look at this very, very green water. Like look at the bad mistake we made, but we were already making it. So
you know what? On that point, Alice, honestly, someone hit me up today on Instagram. They left me this huge long message about how they're about to do their first batch. They are terrified to make a mistake. And I get it. You don't want to grow this beautiful crop and make a mistake with your thing. But please, I implore everyone that's listening right now, please make mistakes. Please make a lot of mistakes. Please fall flat on your face. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's where all of our revelations literally come from. And some of the biggest innovations have come from some pretty amazing size mistakes. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. I know in the Instagram world of posting only the perfect angles and the perfect hash and the perfect colors, we all create this sort of illusion that that's the world. But the real reality behind all of that there's a bunch of ugliness, and there's a bunch of mistakes, and there's a bunch of disappointment, and there's a bunch of adversity that actually will lead us to our successes in life. So
you learn more from mistakes. Absolutely.
Oh my God. And that's coming from a guy. That just came from Skunkman Sam. And we all know that he's forgotten more than most of us will ever know about cannabis. So that's a profound statement for him to say. So thanks for backing me up on that. And welcome to Debbie Goldsberry into the room here. She's coming in live from California, I'm guessing. Oh, we got you.
Here at the Dab Bar.
Oh, you're at the Dab Bar. Tell us about your new Dab Bar.
Managers.
What's up?
Yeah, we opened at 11.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome to Hash Church. Nice to see your smiling faces.
Glad to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, how you doing, Debbie? It's been a while. We were just listening to the girls in green that were showing up. It's nice to have yet another woman. We just never get enough women in Hash Church, and I'm changing that for Hash Church 3.0 big time.
Hell yeah!
Nice.
Yeah, I'm forcing.
Yeah, everything's good. We're good. Just getting things
Wonderful.
set up over here. Hoping to see some people this morning, and we opened up our Dab Bar about 2 weeks ago, and it's beautiful. We're ready for people.
Oh, I'm really envious. Let me tell you, we had a good thing going for a long time. I opened my vapor bar, in 2003, quite a bit ahead of its time, really. And Mark Emery opened one up not too long later, and it's still kind of going, but a lot of the lounges in our city that opened up, unfortunately, have sort of disappeared and closed down. And even a couple of Puff Wednesdays ago with John Burfello, we found ourselves in the rain under a bridge having a session because there was nowhere for us to go. And that's a bit of a disappointment, you know? It's like, look, it's legal. We have a federal law. It's like, give us a space. Like, go ahead.
It's hard. Dispensary trying to get a license for on-site consumption. So hard, very, very hard. You're gonna have to sign on with the in just a second.
Yeah, you're cutting out on me a little bit there.
You keep breaking up, Debbie.
Welcome, Colin. I muted you, so if you go to talk, I just muted you. I thought your mic was affecting Debbie's, but I think it was just her connection. So hopefully she can make it back. Debbie always has a bit of a hard time on Hash Church, but once it works out, she is an OG in the community down in California for sure. She was one of I guess she started with Etienne originally at the Berkeley Patients Group. But even before that, I knew Debbie. I met Debbie through Hillary Black, who started the BC Compassion Club, and I met her and one of her partners at the time here, right? Actually, two doors 2 doors over from the house I'm in right now. 22, 23 years ago is when I met Debbie. So what a kind of trippy, small little community it is for those that like, I mean, here's the thing about the cannabis community. There's a multitude of pathways. There's the sort of, you know, there's the business aspect, which is like, ooh, that's not really the community. You know, the community is more like people like Wade and like Forrest and like Wendy Turner and like, you know, Skunkman Sam. And I just see the community as this wonderful, incredible thing that's growing daily. Every time I go to events, I meet new and interesting people. Here's a trippy story. I used to have a neighbor that we didn't really connect. We were friendly to one another, but I always felt like I could have been his friend. And in the end, I ended up finding him at Lyft 2 days ago, and I walked by and he was selling greenhouses. And I said, hey, Ted, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, well, I sell greenhouses to the cannabis industry. And I'm like, well, for how long have you been doing that? And he's like, well, I sold my first greenhouse probably in 2008 for cannabis. And I was just like, this guy was my neighbor for like 2 years and we never hung out. And I'm like making all the hash and he's selling all the greenhouses. What do you got there, Wade? Little tincture down the hatch. Wade's dosing live on Hash Church. Good to see, good to see.
I found that a little bit of CBD and THC a couple times a day helps the man feel good.
Nice. I felt like you were going to do some sort of Mary Poppins play on a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. And there it was, man. I appreciate that. I feel like that was a psychic moment. And now the Dragonfly Earth Medicine has come into the Hash Church room. How about that?
Hey, good morning, Marcus. Josh is here too, but I'm solo for right now. Super happy to join you. How was Lyft?
Lyft was great, you know, like I made Lyft wonderful because I smoked hash everywhere I went. I walked around with my pipe and my torch like this, and then I just blazed inside and at large groups. Like only one group told me to leave their booth because I was puffing, but I have to say how many very large companies were willing to allow me to vaporize a dab of cannabinoids was good. And it helped me realize, look, obviously I was pushing that envelope a little bit, not trying to get anyone in trouble, but trying to push the envelope that maybe if we had cannabis use at these events rather than free alcohol, we might create a different vibe for the business that we're doing. So.
I mean, I think that's so important because you're talking about cannabis community and that is cannabis community. And it's sort of like, hey, here we are. And this is us. And it sort of helps in a way infiltrate the community into the industry. And I think that that's important. I'm glad that you're pushing it.
Well, you know, I always knew that cannabis does help change the way you think, regardless if you're inhaling it into your lungs, you could be consuming it, you could be wearing it, you could be driving down the highway and see it growing on the side of the road. It'll have an effect on your consciousness. It's just the way the plant works. But if you are inhaling it, it's really like, it's the one they're the most afraid of. They're kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, maybe it's medicinal. Okay, maybe it's recreational, but like, you know, for God's sakes, don't inhale it into your lungs, but would you like some tequila? That's just the mentality that they're coming from. And I don't exactly know who they are when I say they, but I think it's important for us to push the envelope. I don't want to be rude. I would never create a smoky environment, but I'm vaporizing at low temperatures. I'm sharing this wonderful resin with everyone at the event. And all of us are at that event monetizing this incredible, you know, beautiful female aspect of the cannabis plant. So there should be a respect that is there as well. So I try to bring that.
Yeah, you know, when I went down to the NCIA to do a presentation down there's a lot of, you know, suits, a lot of big sort of corporate industry people, and then, you know, after parties and stuff. And I was the only one there who was smoking. It was a trip to me. And I feel like it's important, you know, like every time that we sit down to do any type of a meeting or any type of signatures, or we're, you know, going to do any mergers or anything like that, I always pull up a chair for the cannabis plant. You know, I say, hey, you know, this is such a big part of this industry, and we can't forget about, you know, this plant. So we always pull up a chair for the plant as well and say this is what we're all here for. And I think that it's important.
I mean, I really got to give it up to, obviously, and I could say this about everything for everything, but the OG to do it was Skunkman Sam. Like, he just did not give a fuck. He would puff everywhere. He was just like, and I was always like that too. It's not like I saw him and I was like, I'm going to copy him and do that. But it was one of the things I was like, I'm probably going to get along with this guy. He does not give a fuck. He's definitely going to be using cannabis wherever he wants. And he'll gladly get into a loud discussion about it. Were we at a restaurant one time, you, me, and Rob, and I think it was Simone's place. I think we were there, and you were like, I want to smoke. And he was like, of course you can smoke. So, of course, Sam smokes, as we all do, because Rob and I aren't going to watch Sam smoke and not smoke. And then someone in the restaurant, like some Dutch people or whatever, were like upset that we were smoking in the restaurant. And the owner of the restaurant told them that they could leave. Like, it was incredible.
Didn't that sort of happen to us at the Roger Waters concert? We
almost got kicked out, Marcus.
We may have gotten in trouble at the Roger Waters concert too.
Yeah. It seems to happen everywhere I go.
You know who else used to do that back in the day? Can you guys hear me now? I hope so. But
Perfect.
Jack Herrera.
Oh.
I was with Jack Herrera at a Chinese restaurant just in LA somewhere, and he was like, we're smoking. And we did. The restaurant staff didn't know what to do. They didn't do anything. So we just smoked marijuana, had our food, and that was that. That's very true too. Jack was very, very much like that. And almost equally as abrasive as Sam could be about it. Like, and I say that with love. I definitely don't say that.
No, he couldn't be as abrasive as me. I try hard.
I don't know, man. Jack could be pretty abrasive. In a good way. Anyway, good to have these old memories. Good to have, you know, everyone in the room right now. We kind of had a nice quiet start to Hash Church today. Like I said, we had no plans of discussion. We just were like, let's gather and talk. And so, you know, a little bit more about Lyft, I guess. I didn't really see any, I did see one of our alumni, one of our congregation, Jonathan Zaid, if you remember this young fellow. Jonathan was maybe 15 years old when he came on Hash Church. I can't, maybe he was older. But he was the kid who was a really intelligent kid, very much not from the cannabis world, very just like growing up in a Joe Strady environment and just intelligent, and sort of got sick and started using cannabis, and then became like the face for, you know, getting the insurance companies to pay for it the same way they do pharmaceutical drugs. And so I did see him speak a little bit. I felt bad that there was very few people in those seats. And I've had that, I think I had that with someone else. I can't remember who it was. They were telling me they went up to tell their story, and their story is super profound, and it's like a patient story. And there was just very few people there. And then, you know, the guy from Marlboro, or the tobacco giants, came and spoke, and it was standing room only. You know, so that was kind of like, I guess that is a little bit of what's going on in the cannabis industry right now. But
what is Lyft? Is it like an expo or a weed event? Or
yeah, it's our MMJ.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Conference sort of thing. It's it started out pretty small, but yeah, it's at the convention center. It happens in Toronto and it happens in Vancouver. And it, you know, it's a time where an enormous amount of people from the community come down. If you guys remember the documentary, I don't know if I sent it out by email. I kind of meant to. I might have spaced. Called The Need to Grow. I sent it to Josh and Kelly for sure. I may have sent it to you, Wade. I'm not sure. It's password blocked, but it's a good documentary. It's got some sort of inspirational stuff in there, and I think it would be a good thing to have a talk about it eventually. And so I met one of the guys who was involved in that film, and that was kind of valued time that I spent with him. And I saw, you know, good people from, you know, Ian Davidson from Segra. I got to spend a bunch of time with him. I bumped into Aaron from DNA Genetics, and he's like, oh, you know, we had a power failure right before I left California, and I didn't bring a jacket, and it was freezing out. So I gave him my jacket. I was like, well, dude, whatever, man, you know, I got you. So I gave him my jacket off my back. And then I saw him in the city a day later. I was driving and I was like, that looks like my jacket. And He's got the hood up, his hands in the pocket. It's pouring rain and cold. And I'm like, he didn't see me, but I laughed. I was like, okay, he's getting good use out of the jacket. And while I was talking to Aaron from DNA, Sabo from Hanu Labs walks in the door. And I love Sabo. He's just such a great guy. I'm always wanting him to come on and share. I love the way he does these dialogues, these sort of parenting and cannabis use talks that he's really sort of pioneered from my perspective. Go ahead.
Did you see Irie's talk on psychedelics by any chance?
I unfortunately missed it, but I got the better Cliff Note version from Irie herself while I chain fed her dabs at a booth that had like a big joint rolling machine. She was like, oh, let's go to my friend's booth. And that's what I loved about Lyft, that people that had paid big money for these booths, people that had like interest in all sorts of, look, we don't want to be, I'm not interested personally with all licensing and what my companies are going through to be like breaking a bunch of laws, but I do need to push the envelope of civil disobedience to a point where we understand, like, listen, we need lounges. Give us somewhere to do this then, if we can't do it wherever we are.
We need that more often. We got to break those boundaries down. Those are the rules that are made to be broken. Like, we're not doing our job if we're following those rules. Like, they have no business being in town with their corporate entities without us smoking weed all over the place.
Well, the one good thing about all these rules is, like when I was in high school, you got way higher when you smoked a joint in the boys' bathroom than if you did any place else. It's just the reality.
I mean, that really is the truth right there.
Well, I'm gonna try and say before I cut out last time with my bad internet connection is we have a licensed dispensary, so hard to get a vape lounge permit, but there's probably 50 of them in Oakland just unlicensed, not being, we have a low enforcement priority for cannabis. So it's so weird how people can open an illicit one very easy, but if you're willing to come above board and be taxed and regulated, it's nearly impossible. So Godspeed to everybody, because we need to get these things everyone, but it was enormously difficult for us to get our license.
The only thing I go back to, because I hear that and it pains me to hear things like Colton and his family had to move away from their family to be like in prison in Colorado, basically, because the only place they could use that cannabis sort of safely. It's just such a bummer. But then I think it's not quite as big of a bummer as, say, Rick DeLisi's father getting put in prison for the last 37 years. Or for when they would kick our doors down and like shoot the dog and then break up the family and then have the wife have to visit the husband in prison for 10 years on the other side of the country. Because they were doing all that sort of shit for a long time too. So I think what they're doing now is complete and total bullshit as well. But it's such a more filtered, diluted version of the shit that we've been dealing with for the last 30 years that we trek on. Like, you're doing it, Debbie. You're just like,
no, you know what? I agree. Down here in California, everyone's always complaining about our legislation because it's far from perfect and it created this ridiculous tax scheme. And it should be obvious that the underground economy is left out of the above ground market because it's too pricey to get in and it's a lot of guys in suits, to be honest. And it really does suck. But at the same time, we're working to improve it, and we still do have a flourishing underground economy, like it or not. And the regulation has made it safer for that as well. So we're seeing less people arrested. Families aren't being destroyed anymore. Yeah, we're not so worried that they're going to shoot our dogs. There's been so many improvements, and I don't know. In some ways, I think like this: like, we got to keep getting those suits stoned. Like, isn't it the more high we get them, like the more they think like us? Doesn't marijuana change the way that their thought processes work? So yeah, let's start making sure, like you're saying, carry our vape rig around. We even had a funder recently come through Magnolia trying to raise money to expand. And the guy got so curious, he wanted to dab. We dabbed the heck out of him. We changed his life in one dab, you know what I mean? Like,
you could potentially even put a little drop on the top of the Puffco that they take a hit from if you really want to change some minds. Just
I would
saying.
never. I would
You know?
never do that.
I wouldn't
No,
either. I wouldn't
I wouldn't
either.
either. Just saying
Unless
you could.
I had to.
I follow the Timothy Leary school of thought, not for many things, but for his 2 commandments of thou shalt not keep people from taking psychedelics.
It matters about dose.
Yeah, and thou shalt not give psychedelics without one's knowledge.
Agreed.
That is
Absolutely
funny.
agreed.
That is
Harm
funny.
reduction strategy. There you go.
Yeah, and totally agreed. It does change the way people think, and that's why if you have the opportunity to give someone who's never been given a dab that could affect things down the road in a really good way, be responsible and don't use that as an opportunity of revenge to destroy the person, but use that as an opportunity to truly give someone a special experience and show them how incredible of an experience you can have from this plant. I am the master of the micro dab because I want people to get the taste. I certainly don't want to destroy them. Like that's really cool. Like give that person 2 hours of anxiety and discomfort and then have them never want to use cannabis again. Like give yourself a check if you're doing that. And have I done it? Yes.
Also,
okay, I was joking about that and I totally agree with you.
The truth
Also,
is,
go ahead.
if you want to change people and they don't want to smoke, so be it. Help them make money off of cannabis. That'll change their mind also.
Well, that's what's changed most of their minds right now. So many of them are like,
Exactly.
whoa.
And that, to me, it's a good thing. I mean, what would you rather have them doing? Locking people up and putting them in prison?
Dude, I'm telling you.
Or profiting from our community?
This is where you and I see eye to eye, Sam, because I say this to people and they look at me like I'm an alien. They're like, we can't let judges and cops be a part of this industry. And I'm like, why? Would you rather them be bashing people's heads in and giving them 10-year sentences for cannabis? Of course we want cops and judges to be involved in cannabis. Oh my God. We don't want them to control it, but they should be allowed to play and everyone should be allowed to play. That's what I'm fighting for.
I don't know. I think that, I would have to disagree with you guys on this one a little
problem.
bit. I think that it's really important that the craft that you're taking on and something that you're making money on and something that you're putting, your whole life work toward is something that you should actually know about. As a heart surgeon, somebody doesn't go in and be like, oh, I'm studying all this heart surgery. I'm calling myself a heart surgeon, but hey, I've never done heart surgery before, but I'm out there in the world doing heart surgery, or like me in the naturopathic world, seeing all these, massive male doctors that are OBGYNs and they're trying to help women have babies and they're saying it's going to be okay. Go ahead, have your baby, when they've never experienced it before. It's really hard for me to feel like you have to make that bridge in order to embody something that you're doing and feel really good about it and know that you're doing the right thing.
That's a very, very good point. That is a very, very good point.
What Marcus and I are really saying is it's better for them to be selling, growing, whatever, than busting and putting people in prison.
Yes,
really
and we need those people to change the way they think, and we want those people to change. And why would we try to keep them from that change? So that's all. You know what I mean? There's these counterpoints to it because
on that point makes all the sense in the world. Of course, we want them to be involved.
Like imagine they come to your farm.
I probably won't be involved with them.
I don't know why I was doing it. I would love to offer my time and energy. I want to do we hold people to the mistakes or to the choices that they've made in their past, or do we allow for growth in this world? Are we here to grow, or are we here to, you're either at the top at this level right now, or you can't be with us over here because we've walked this walk. It's like, no, I walked the walk, but I did it like a Naga Baba for everyone, not just for myself.
Well, that's what's important. This plant is an adaptogen. It when you ingest it, when you grow it, it adapts the soil. When you're around it, it adapts your mind. When a community takes it on, it adapts a community. It's an adaptogen. So I think that it's really important to see all different facets of it. One thing I would argue the same, way that a small grower, the industry, and I would say, hey, it's important for you to know all parts of this, now. The plant is adapting. It's okay to step into the corporate side of it as well, because then you're seeing all sides of cannabis as it is today. Just as if I would say that to the corporate entities, hey, smoke a little bit so you can see the whole picture of it.
And it's not just a born again Christian thing where you can just be like, oh, I'm changed forever, hire me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Everyone's making great points. Go ahead.
It's very much the red thread. It draws a line where everyone can kind of pay attention and come together on, and it allows us, it's like the circle. You invite everyone and you try to invite everyone into the circle, and you share in that. But there's it's delicate to, I see both sides of it, and I appreciate both sides of it, but it's really delicate. We need to understand where we come from and where we're going, and we want to include as many people as we can, but we also want to have everyone's voice at the table too. We don't want to be just moving too quickly.
It is delicate. And at that point, I'm glad we're able to have a conversation where, like, we can disagree, but still I stick by my point. And then Kelly said what she said, and I was like, I'd stand by her point too. So now I'm standing on both sides of the fence. Like, wow, it's really about having the discussion, because it changes, and there's really subtle nuances in the changes that if you're not continually having the dialogue, and we become afraid to have the conversation, it's like, oh, I'm not going to commit to that. I don't want to get bashed on social media. It's like, then all of a sudden it just goes away and it becomes a lot more shallow. And I think it's one of the values of Hash Church, that we're all willing to have these conversations, whatever they are. They take us down these rabbit holes, and doesn't necessarily mean we have to be that person that we were 3 years ago. Oh, well, you said this 3 years ago. Yeah. And in those 3 years, I grew and I changed and I learned, and now I'm saying this. Is that allowed? God, I hope so.
What I've heard from a lot of people is it's not right that they make a profit when they were anti-cannabis for so long. Well, so what if they were anti-cannabis for so long? Do you want them to stay anti-cannabis, or would you like them to be, if the only thing that'll move them is to be, trying to make money off of cannabis? I say more power to them. Yeah, I don't care who makes the profit from cannabis. I really don't care.
No, you never have the whole time I've known you. Potent Ponic Steve is in the room. He's in Zimbabwe in Africa right now. He's saying, they should be lining up behind the cannabis veterans. It's disrespectful to those who hid and fought for decades. And I see his point as well. It's a hard thing to just pick one side, because I'm like, yeah, I don't want them doing that anymore. I'd way rather them be like, yeah, like maybe I'll do. And when I say like, oh, if someone was busting people for like the last 20 years and now they want to be in the cannabis industry, well, maybe they're not a cannabis grower, but maybe they're really good at security, and they'll keep your cannabis grow from getting ripped off. It's not like I'm saying they should get in and start becoming our growers. But
I think the thing that really is bothering me right now, besides the loss of the culture and the fact that so many people are going out of business because they can't get the highly costly permits, is that I feel like cannabis is magical. And I agree, cannabis changes people. Adaptogen, what a great word. We call it transformational. Before you use cannabis, you're one way, you use it, you're another way afterwards. And even our facility, we want it to be transformational like that. You feel one way, you come into the facility, the way you're treated and respected and the things that happen change the way you think, and you exit another way. We've been trying the entire industry, and our effort to legalize cannabis is based on that. We're legalizing cannabis because we want to transform the way people think about being nice to each other, about sharing, about being tolerant and kind. And cannabis drives those values somehow by what it does to our minds and how we discuss things like this when we're together. That's what's missing. Wear your damn suit, but you got to realize this isn't corn. This is a magical plant. And I think that's what we as a culture have to insist on. We're transformational. If you're going to stay in a suit and want to just make money, fuck, I don't know if we're on the same page exactly. I'm going to try and transform you.
Yeah, exactly. It's doubtful that it's going to go the other way around. Jan Big Time Inc.
The way to look at it is they need transformation an awful lot. Just like alcoholics need transformation an awful lot. and medical people with problems. They need transformation. Well, the anti-pot people, they need transformation. They really do.
Well, we could flip the script here really quick because Jan Big Time Inc., my boy in Brooklyn, just made a really good point. And he said, you know, in New York, it's not about the police and the cannabis veterans. It's a race thing. So now we get into, what about all the brown people in prison for this still, and all the white people who are profiting off of it? And who wants to have that discussion? Because that's
equal for everyone is good. It's hard in California this year. There was actually a lot of families that were held at gunpoint this year.
Absolutely.
And there were police officers that cut down people's greenhouses, and there were a lot of families afraid this year. And so it is a little hard, you know, to be a radical family member and join forces with anyone. But it doesn't. We're in full agreement that anyone deserves transformation.
What were you going to say, Debbie?
I don't even know. I've probably had 100 different thoughts since I tried to say that first thing.
Well, it was in regards to the race, you know, aspect.
Yeah, of course, it's who's getting the permits too. It's the problem. Big money moved in. You know, that tended to be these white guys in suits. They took all the permits off the table right away. In fact, they were lobbying most of these big governments and small governments on creating the regulations to be sure that only they could afford the permits. So it's pretty messed up. And obviously, there's a huge movement now, both national, statewide, and city by city, to create and build equity into the process. But it's not easy to pin down legislatively equity, because you can't be like, you just can't give out permits based on race. That's not allowed either. How do you create equity in a democratic system and put teeth into it? It's really damn hard, I'll tell you. And a lot of it starts with people having to work very hard, especially people that have the privileges and the permits already.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, and you know, the cost of the permits and where you know going to get your money, and how is it that you're going to start up, and if you've been in, you know, the black market or an illegal grow for a really long time, how is it that you're going to form a corporation? Like here in Canada, you have to have a corporation that's formed by, you know, the government of Canada. But in order to have that, you know, you have to show some kind of funds in order to get an account up here in Canada that's listed under hemp or under cannabis. Oh, sorry about this. You have to be able to show that you have funds. And if you don't show where those funds came from, and you've been in the black market and you weren't able to put it into something, you know, that made sense for them to be able to accept your application, then you're shit out of water. It's SOL at this point. And I believe that, you know, a lot of the cannabis culture is dealing with that, as well as a lot of, you know, people of color all over the world. You know, I don't believe that, and even women too. A lot of women are in this industry and they didn't show where their cash was coming from. They, you know, just making cash, and now they can't step into the industry because they have zero credit.
And so
that's a super huge, you know, issue, I believe, in the brown cultures as well, is because, you know, it's not credit in the same way, so there's not an equal playing field.
So let's look at it as an opportunity to join together and become stronger. Like, if people of color are having a hard time, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It almost makes it even more amazing when you do it. So I would love to see more, you know, brown people, more women. You know, I don't like to just call it brown people. It just feels weird, you know, but any person that feels like they're not having an opportunity, I would love to see those people rise up. And we're trying to help a network, you know, create that.
And, you know, another thing is within our Pure Collective, when we sat down in Garberville and we had these discussions, bringing, you know, more people into the industry that don't have opportunity was a really big part of our list. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to help support small farmers all over the globe be able to come into the industry and share their craft? Not only share their craft, but also talking about Appalachia. You know, this term Appalachia is really only used in Lisbon. It's something that you really can only gain if you're, you know, run to their credibility and their, you know, their rules and regulations. And that might not include, you know, a culture that's working up in Milana that has been, you know, making hash for centuries. Do they deserve, as farmers, to be able to have an appellation in cannabis? Absolutely, they do. So we need to be creating an equality around the globe of cannabis farmers and cannabis culture so that they can be a part of this industry and moving forward. And the way that we can do that is by joining together, and the people that have power and do have licenses right now, to start including them in on the conversations. And that's exactly what we're doing in the Pure Collective right now, is we're including these cultures that might not have ability to sign out applications and be able to have accreditation in banks, to be able to have a voice and be able to have.
So well said. You know, it's, as someone who's had to navigate the extreme learning curve of getting into this space, you know, it's, to your point, it's confusing, and it's, you know, you have to learn to trust in a way that you've never learned to trust before. And there's so many facets of this that you're not gonna know about, you know, because you've been focusing on what's really important, which is the plant. And that's it's really difficult to navigate all of it. So it's really important that we do band together. We all come together in a way that is community forward, and we share our experiences with one another, in sharing how to get our plant to more people. You know, the industry is, you know, I hope we can make it community, you know, and community forward.
Yeah, Colin, I think that it's really truly the only way, because
Yeah.
it's pretty intimidating to look at these really large polycorporatics that have stepped into the industry, and you know they are really making something of it. We have a lot to learn from them. We can even join in with them, but it's also incredibly intimidating because, you know, they may have a staff of 400 and they're asking us how many you have, and we're like, well, we've got 4, you know, four people work for our corporation.
Awesome ones.
But then you've got another small corporation, and then another small corporation, and then you've got this huge collective. So we're adding up the amount of regenerative flower that our corporation as a group is growing, and it's absolutely phenomenal, and it's all over the world. And then it makes us feel like, oh, okay, we've got a say in here, we've got something, and now we can truly make changes. Because if we want to go make legislation, we can say, you know, this piece of legislation, we strongly agree that you all should really, you know, get behind, because it's signed on by 70 scientists, 40 doctors, 170 farmers. And that really gives you know, a credibility to be able to change the industry from the inside out, which is, I know you, Marcus, you always talk about that, changing the industry from the inside out. And that is a way that we can do it, that has incredible power.
And really, we have a lot of work to do outside of that. Like, we got to find good hash strains. You know, we're trying to find good trichome heads. What's all this business, you know?
Yeah. And the qualitative you know, gets to the quantitative, to tell that story, you know, to these people. You know, we have the knowledge that we can bring to the table to let's say a bill, for instance, is unparalleled. You're going to be able to speak on the plant, you know, the do's and don'ts in how IPM should be done. You know, it really stems into all these different facets that goes way beyond numbers and, you know, bottom lines and all the things that get so top lined that are really secondary. It's all of that stuff in terms of the industry. It's all about the plant, and if you don't, you know, if you can't actually grow the plant well, all the rest doesn't matter. And if you don't know what the do's and don'ts of that aren't, it just doesn't matter. So that's where community, I see, has all of the power and all of the knowledge and all of the resources really to share and to really build this in the way that it really should be. You know, it's an ornamental that we're attempting to industrialize, so to speak. You just said it. We're still finding cultivars that are really meant for making hash. I'm still going through. I've been growing the same 4 cultivars for hash making for over 2 decades at this point. And it's because there's very few that make the cut, you know, and we could spend a lifetime searching. And if we had more people around like ourselves sharing and the ideas that, hey, I have this cultivar. Hey, you should have that cultivar.
Well,
We'll get much further.
Let's start
you know.
right now with you telling what four cultivars those are that you've been making hash with for the last 2+
So
decades.
so lemon cake is one. This particular variety of strawberry cough. It has since we've sequenced it with medicinal genomics, we've learned that there's A. calio inside that variety. I have a variety that is a chemdog times OGKB that is just unbelievable. That is just it's phenomenal. And I have a yes.
You've had
And
it for 20 years already, all of these.
yes, I've had this. The chem dogs will maybe a little bit less, but the other two, the lemon cake and the strawberry, and then this particular variety of Jack Herrera times hash plant that is just it's unbelievable. It just dumps. It has this it's beautiful heads. So, and just this week, I just washed some of these varieties in a facility, and it just it reminds me, how simple it was and how complex it's gotten. And at the end of the day, we're still collecting these heads, and there's really nothing different here other than the process has gotten bigger. So
on that note, how about a bong rip, all you mother lovers out there?
Marcus has a lot of knowledge about varieties that perform well collecting resin, making water hash using his bag system. He has more knowledge than anybody else I know. But and then with dry sifting, there's different groups of people who have different clones that perform really, really well. They just dump the resin relatively easy.
Like that slee stack crossed with skunk.
Yep.
That was a
Some
dream.
of our favorite.
But yeah, so
Go ahead.
Sam, yes, those varieties still are with me now, and they're growing right now, and they're great. They're phenomenal.
So we have really amazing hash makers in our pure certification because we don't allow solvents in our certification, and
Petrochemical solvents.
yeah, and Ganja Gill and Brandon Kush Kirk and the families down there. There's a lot of them. LOS Garden, Sean. But recently we've been hanging out with Brandon and Gil a lot more, and they're just amazing people. You should check them out online. They make incredible hash, and been also searching for hash strains and washing them a lot and stuff. So recently we've gotten some really good strains from them, and other people in the family went out to Michigan and Gage Green. We got some really beautiful genetics from them. But we recently just cloned a strawberry guava and purple punch.
A punch bread.
Brandon was the best thing ever. Brandon and Amanda, they have killed it in the garden this season. And I was talking to Amanda earlier today. I said to them, I can't wait to be back there. And they were saying, let's just do a hash session. They have amazing new strains. I'm super excited to see it.
Superb. I'd love to hear what some of your favorite strains is that you're coming across too in your travels.
And we have them up in Canada now. So
yeah, we got some Kush Kurt going on up here in Amanda.
Guava Punch for sure is one of them.
Have you guys met each other before, Josh and Kelly, the girls in green?
No, we haven't.
Oh, okay, because I wanted to. Now you know each other. I wanted to hook you up. I told them I was going to introduce you guys, so at the end I'll give you guys contact info.
Hi. I'm actually we're from Brazil. I don't know. I guess you guys have entered later before presenting yourselves. But now one of us. I'm living actually in California. And I'm a fan of you guys. I love, I checked, Brandon's garden, too. I'm, this is BioVortex, too. I've worked also with Sunshine. She's not, DEM Pure certified, but she was the one that introduced me, to you guys. She's an amazing person. And it's been great, to go and check out, what people have been making, because there are amazing hash strains that have been growing over there. especially like dry farmed, like a bunch of like dry farmed love from there, which I've been very
It's
excited.
incredible. It's incredible what the dry farming family is doing there. And Sunshine is an amazing woman and doing all the work at K-Mud, the local radio station, and just an all-around awesome person. And yeah.
And while she's not DEM Pure certified, she certainly is a part of our collective.
And a part of our community and everything. And Jesse, BioVortex, we got some really good genetics from him this year. The GMO by banana, what is it? It's a SFOG banana dog.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the banana by the black dog.
And one thing that we've been really blown away with lately, because we just really felt like we found the unicorn on our farm last year, was a coffee variety that we pheno hunted, you know, massive.
Kaya.
I know, Marcus, you saw that coffee. I think that you got to smoke that, and we even did a little rosin press with that and got some really nice stuff off of it. Well, we kept that varietal and we cloned it off, and you know, it's like anything else will have any type of a pathogen on it, and that is just clean as can be. It's unbelievable. It doesn't seem to be attacked by any type of yeast or molds or any. So we're really gonna start sharing that with the community because it hashes out. So
and that is a full melt certified cultivar. You got to add the full melt certification on some of your DEM Pure, because the cultivars that do, you know, that melt and liquefy, that's full melt certified. People need to know that information.
Hey guys.
I love
a good
it.
point.
That's a great point, because we are going to be doing.
What's up?
No, you can finish. Sorry, I think we cut here.
We were done. Go ahead. You got something to say? Jump in.
Oh yeah. No, I was gonna say some strains that I've seen here in Uruguay and Chile, because you guys are up there, and I have been, like, while Alice has been living in California and, well, doing an amazing job with hash making and growing plants, I've been actually searching for things that are happening here in South America. And recently I've come across like some amazing women hash makers in Chile, like Copa dos Andes, which is like the Andes Cup for hash. Like it had
It's a Chilean cup.
Yeah, it had 5 judges. 3 of them were women, and I was like, what? I had never seen that here, like, ever. And well, in Uruguay, Junta Collective, which are 2 Brazilians that have been growing there, they have like made one of the best hashes I've smoked of a very, very famous strain here in South America. That is the 24K, which is like it's super popular here. Like every cup I go around here, they some kind of, or a hash or the flower will get like first, second, or third place, because here not so many people grow, and like we exchange a lot. So you see, we need to make like a seed thing for Brazil too, you know, because it is like this kind of information that we're discussing here. And I hope that there are many Brazilians that actually speak English, that have the privilege to speak English, are watching. Like a bunch of people, they grow the seed that comes from the brickweed, you know. It's maybe like a land raised kind of something from Paraguay, but they grow from that. They don't know about pheno hunting. They don't know about selecting genetics. And they check things on our Instagram sometimes about hash making. And they are just like doing hash with their like trims from like plants that are not hash plants at all. So if we bring this information, if we manage somehow to like exchange seeds and then give this to the people, also people are going to have information. They're going to start like a whole different culture.
I like a dragonfly on your arm, by the way, if that's what I'm seeing. That's really sweet. Nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
so
are they making in South America? Is it water hash? Is it dry sift? Is it rosin? What are they doing? How are they doing it?
The people there are doing, most of them, I feel like they're doing like solventless extraction, like solventless ways. But I mean, I gotta say, it is a huge privilege to be doing this here. Like, it's not everyone. It's hard to grow the amount that you need to like make hash. Like, people are not like growing like 6 plants in their places, like in the grow box, so they can wash it all, you know? Like
No way.
Yeah, they
No
wash
way.
it with the trim, and there's just a little bit of hash. It's just an experience. But a bunch of people do the dry sieve, like the dry sieve,
Yeah.
and like some bubble bags. And
People are still experiencing a lot with butane and some kind of solvents, but
I feel
most
blessed.
people that
I
are
feel
like
blessed.
competing in cups and things like that, they have already shifted a lot.
Yeah.
So you see that the people that still don't have much access to information and are like scared of not having enough out of their trim, and they could be doing something that they know that they would have like a better amount, like alcohol is still being used by mothers that are producing their medicine for their kids in their house, like a lot,
a bunch of alcohol.
A lot, like I would say
the alcohol and vape pens here in like around Brazil too. There's also like different experiences because there's not much like big cultivars. It's hard for you not to have big cultivars for you to make a bunch of new experiences.
Yeah.
And Marcus, you did a huge educational piece, you know, for Brazil as well. And that was amazing. I know that a whole bunch of people have watched that, and you've done like really gotten on ground level to really reach the Brazilians. And I really commend you for that, because I took time to watch that educational piece, and it was really beautiful. And the feedback that we even got from that was like awesome, and telling us how great you are and the education that you put forward.
And Joao is doing really beautiful work. You talked about him before with Ganja Talks, and he was telling us about the ganja there, the brickweed and everything, and he was talking about how there was, and maybe you can elaborate on the public about how there was a boat full of Thai weed that crashed off the coast of Brazil or something, and a bunch of bags of weed went onto the coast of Brazil, and everyone said, "Oh, it's from Thailand." So any good weed in Brazil is called Thai or skunk, and that's just the way it is. And then it's not good, and we don't condone this. But he said that a lot of people just put terpenes on the brickweed in order to get like different flavors, and really Brazilians are just learning about different flavors. So I'm just going to wrap this up. I want to hear what you have to say about this, but we are California really soon for regenerative cannabis down in Humboldt. I hope you're there. If you are there, it'd be really great to talk.
I said it today that I'm going, so I'm definitely.
Excellent. Super looking forward to meeting you.
So we are kind of going on a world tour of conscious growing and conscious living. We're going to be in Humboldt. We're going to do all 3 signs of regenerative cannabises, the one in Maine and Michigan. We're also going to Hawaii, and we're to do the Hawaii Cannabis Expo and do a whole Pakalolo Aloha tour, learning about farming in Hawaii. And then we're going to, in May, we're going to the Flame of Thrones in Ireland and learning all about the, work going on in Ireland. So, and we're doing little cups and little conscious growing cups, the whole place. So we would love to go to Brazil and South America to bring that love and that education to there. But first of all, tell us about the weed and Thai weed and Brazil.
Okay, so I mean, Thai weed is like a very old school way of like mentioning it. Like nowadays, people smoke either the brickweed or they smoke like some Colombia. They call it Colombia. That it's like, well, at least that one you can see the bud, because a bunch of people in Brazil were not educated on how cannabis looks. If they saw a bud, they didn't know that was weed. They thought that was just like a regular plant sometimes, because they thought that weed was the brickweed.
And it shouldn't be green. It should be brown.
It should
it's
be
brownish. So if you ever
very
show something that it's like a bit colorful, it's like a normal flower or something different, because it doesn't have the shape and it doesn't smell or looks like so.
Yeah, I feel like in the last 5 years, people were looking for more information into cannabis, being educated about it, and people were people are on this drive of wanting to grow quality weed, wanting to fight for regulations. Actually, it is so nice to be here in many ways, and just us are from South America and deal with this kind of prohibitionist government in this way. But it's crazy how much we fight for legalizations and regulations, and then we go to California or we go to Canada and we see the amount of issues that actually what we have always dreamed of. like
will bring us like
Yeah.
for the next years.
For
Like
the next, you know, like we see like all these people in suits. We see like just big corporations. In Brazil, we don't have the culture as like humble, like people growing weed for the past 30, 40 years like that, like making a bunch of money out of it. But we do have like a cannabis community here in Brazil, a
Yeah.
huge one though.
the thing is, this year things changed a bit. So like, of course, what he said is perfect, but it would apply a bit for like, I would say before 2019, because this year actually popular media started covering a bit of the benefits of medicinal cannabis or therapeutical cannabis, as we prefer to refer.
Yeah, we just got like therapeutical cannabis legalized.
Many quotes there,
like,
because it's like
legalized.
only imported, super expensive,
Only
no-
for like only in oil, maybe like
Only
the
for-
separated compound, like the separated cannabinoid, like very
less than 0.3% of THC.
very from the pharmaceutical industry, you know, like not as like we could create a community of like people growing it in a very sustainable way, in a very regenerative farm, like in a farm like that.
But,
But not yet.
yeah.
But we hope that we can bring that. So once this happens, we have this kind of regulations, people can start growing like sustainably already.
Well, there's very important research in cannabinoids that have been done in Brazil, in São Paulo for years. I think the original study that Meshulam worked on to show its efficacy against epilepsy was done in the late 70s and early 80s in São Paulo, and I just posted in our chat here a very important study that shows the connection between CBD and traumatic brain injury memory that, again, could be the thing that underpins PTSD treatment. So truth be told, there's been cannabinoid research going on in Brazil for years, and these centers of excellence have generated very important data that show, you know, clinical and preclinical efficacy of cannabinoids to treat a number of disorders, including epilepsy.
Nowadays, we're having a study being made in Brazil too with like CBD. Just so you guys understand, like all of these cannabinoids are not like grown here or made here. They're normally imported from America or Canada. So they get a permit so they can import the substance. Not only CBD, even psychedelic research. Like they managed to import MDMA already. They managed to import LSD already. So there have been some researchers like that. But it's always important. And now they're making one with people that have, some drug abuse with crack. So
Well,
they're making
people from North America come down to Brazil for ayahuasca treatment. I know two people who claim that they would be dead if they did not go to Brazil for their ayahuasca. I know that that's been commercialized in some ways, shapes, and forms. People are making money off the whole thing, but yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, why would we limit ourselves just to, you know, the elements of ayahuasca or cannabis when there's a whole rainforest of possibilities of different medicinally active plants and compounds that we haven't even discovered yet. So that's part of the reason why I think we need to, you know, work like crazy until they, you know, get rid of all of the rainforest and make sure that we've made all the discoveries of life-saving medicines before it all goes away. Because I think that, you know, again, there is a program down there to look at that, but you would think again, somehow Brazil and the government should be able to exploit this basically pharmaceutical company that exists in the rainforest of all these unknown medicines that are yet to be discovered. And therein lies economic empowerment and opportunity for jobs and certainly new medicines from biology as opposed from, you know, drug companies.
Our government right now is crazy.
and doesn't invest in science, doesn't invest in new talents, like the good people like that want to study, that want to we even have someone that we really like that was on a TV show here this week that is Siddhartha Ribeiro. He's a neuroscientist and he studies cannabis and dreams. Like he's a very crazy dude, amazing person. He was actually on psychedelic science in California presenting a bit of his work too. But
Brazil
he said that scientists, like people that do research, they are just leaving Brazil because we have no room for this. Like scientists and teachers, they're paying from their own pocket because they don't get like
what I just said that happened through a loophole, which is like FDA from America, like for our sanitarian agency saying, look, there is no way. There's like at least 7,000 kids who I already import them CBD or THC or whatever, or both of them, because they are gonna die, or they have like this proven cases which are they need to use this medically. So even, and then the government, when they were voting, they changed the board. They fired 2 people from the original board and put 2 militaries. That's what happened. And we still passed it, but like with many quotes, as we said.
we are having
so that's what's happening here in Brazil. We do have some very beautiful studies like Siddhartha Ribeiro and scientists working, but they are getting from like sometimes private investment, sometimes their own pockets right now.
And
because the
private
government
investment is even hard here for research. So it's just like a bunch of people that are migrating from Brazil to study outside. Like it's hard to be here doing this. There's no.
Ultimately, they want to keep it separated. You know, I mean, that's the thing. You know, keep it separated, keep it illegal, so then they can capitalize on the good information that's brought. So really, that's fine if that's the way that it is. It just takes people and the citizens and educated intelligence to rise up and create programs that are undeniable, ones that make sense. I wouldn't say that the government paved the way for MAPS to do their work. I think that MAPS paved their own way to do their work, and now they're doing work that's undeniable that the government can't do anything about because it's now become a human rights issue. So I think once we start using words like human rights, and here we are, we're taking our own power back, and you know, we're doing this through intelligence and through education, that I think that we just have to continue to be smarter and more intelligent than what's being presented to us.
Yeah, and yet again, like we continue to say, is that the cannabis plant is an incredible catalyst to push us and catapult us forward. I love to separate the word community to come unity. And I think that that's really powerful, because it's now is the time that we need to start unifying as cannabis culture all over the world. And we all know who we are, no matter what color we are, no matter what socioeconomic background we come from. If you are somebody who uses cannabis, you are part of the cannabis culture. And I think that it is time for us to come together. And also, just a side note on, I don't really know very many governments that aren't crazy right now. Really,
it is worldwide
isn't against their own people, isn't listening to their own people. So we're hitting an incredible mass and an incredible crisis. And I truly believe that the cannabis plant is making her announcement and making her way into the world because of this. It's not just, something that's happening by coincidence. All psychedelics are starting to come out into mainstream culture, and cannabis is coming out into mainstream culture because it is time for us as a critical mass to start questioning the rules and the regulations of government right now.
So let's not think about our borders in our countries, even though we do have to live within the regulations that are been given to us. But if we forget about the borders and create common language, I think we're going to become stronger as an international group.
And that can be done through education, for sure.
One thing we don't have, though, like here we are, a few of us in California. Our California program has become widely known for its failures as much as its successes, right? Like just this week, a couple of things happened. The Bureau of Cannabis Control decided that they're going to run taxation differently, right? It used to be done at distribution. Now they're moving it to retail. A big part of it's moving to retail very soon. And then the governor just put out this thing. He's like, this is a short story. The program's all messed up. I'm going to be doing a bunch of things to fix it. But they're considering cutting cultivation tax at all. They've stacked so many taxes, it's ridiculous. Equity still a big problem. We don't have a model that works. We just don't. You know, we can target disadvantaged neighborhoods and stuff like that, but I don't know how we're going to do this thing and make it work. But for example, we don't have a model to share with each other that builds on our problems and our successes. Like we can't provide our cohorts in South America or Central America who need model legislation, or even just send us a list of facts, what works and doesn't work, you know. We don't have that yet as a community.
Yeah, what we do have though, Debbie, and I totally agree with you. I feel like anytime that, you know, a government is involved, then we have as many problems as we have solutions, you know, unfortunately, because regulations are so steep. But what we do have is we have the cannabis community. We have written SOPs on how you can run a 5-acre farm that we can share with anybody in the world. We have SOPs on how to create healthy extractions, ones that, you know, are both medicinal and for the recreational market as well, that are whole plant, yeah, that we can continue to share. So every bit of work that we do in the cannabis community and inside of these, you know, markets that we're living in around the world, we can share with each other. So that really gives a step up to the people in their own countries.
Oh, you cut out and then you stopped talking. Who was next? Who's next?
Did we lose her?
No, I think she was done talking, but she froze just for the last little bit. They're moving again, so I think we're good. We heard most of that.
Creating a repository for open source data sharing, you know, we don't know where to go. We don't know where to go. In the early days of the internet, right? Isn't that how they did it? There was all the corporate guys, and then there were the people creating things like The Well and creating these big open source sources of data so everybody could grow.
Hey, Debbie, could I share an analogy? When you were talking about an experience, like creating an experience, you know what it reminded me of? And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm wearing a Jerry Garcia shirt. It reminded me of a Grateful Dead concert, you know, that there were certain things that were going to be the same, but there were certain things that were different every time, and it created a unique experience. And I keep on throwing this Grateful Dead analogy in, and even like their business model, which was so counter like what the record industry wanted them to do, which was to sell records. They sold tickets because the magic was created in front of human beings. Like Jerry Garcia used to say, you can't manufacture intensity, right? You can't just go into the studio, turn on the knobs, and automatically just be intense, right? They did that in front of an audience of people, and it went back to the acid test days of where they made this connection with their audience to really transport. And again, when you said that, I haven't really been paying much attention to anything other than this analogy, so I wanted to share it with you. But I just, you know, I was so lucky to grow up at the right time and live in the right place to see the band during the 70s and the 80s. And it was just such a magical transportation. That's exactly what it was. And cannabis was a big undercurrent on Dead Tour. You know, there's so many stories, like the Chem Dog story from Deer Creek 91 and all that. But yeah, you couldn't get good weed on the East Coast. It was brick weed. It was just horrible stuff that was smuggled in gas tanks out to the East Coast market. It was easier to buy cocaine than it was to buy weed in New York. The only place we found good weed was out on Grateful Dead tour. And it's because all my heady friends from NorCal would be on the road bringing their weed. And everyone knew it. Like when the Grateful Dead played at a venue, you could have got hassled at the Neil Young show or at the Zeppelin show. Yeah, I'm old enough to have seen Zeppelin. So it's like, you know, you could go to a Grateful Dead show and automatically you're allowed to smoke weed. No one's getting busted for smoking weed because it was just the Grateful Dead. It was just part of it. And it was always dank, California weed. I had a good friend who I got weed from in the late 80s out on Grateful Dead tour. And I hope he's still around. Ron from Shasta, Ron the pizza man. He had a pizza oven in the back of an old Econoline van and would make pizza out on the Grateful Dead parking lot scene. It was just such a cool place. But yeah, so my association again with this transportation thing was back to my days as a spun out kid on Dead Tour.
Totally
Following
agree
this
with
band
you on
around,
that.
but really it was the smell of weed, and it just like even like today, I mean, you could go to shows and you smell dank weed being smoked, and you knew that that was sort of like the bridge. And Jerry loved good weed, right? In fact, I think the Garcia estate recently has partnered up with a production manufacturer. They were bound to, right? So there'll be some Garcia branded products out there. I'm looking at Josh and Kelly. I know you guys know
Let's
Trixie
give
well.
thanks to the Snodgrass family too, because they really raised up, you
Yeah.
know, a community out of the ashes. Let's say out of the ashes.
I
of
had
a
a personalized Grateful Dead Snodgrass bowl back in the days. It's somewhere in my collection. It's smashed somewhere. I got to get it fixed again. But yeah, I mean, it's so cool, just that whole thread that to me, I mean, I saw the Dead at an early age, and I really didn't know what I was seeing when I was seeing it. But I go back to Debbie's analogy of it being a transportation from
And
some.
you know, the Grateful Dead was open source. There you go.
Yeah.
Like every single bit of it was open source, and you know, it's sort of to reflect on what you're talking about. I wouldn't have made it through University of Oregon without, you know, swinging bags of weed at every single show, and I'm so grateful for that. You know, at least I had the good stuff for sure coming from Oregon. And I was there. I was there at Ken Kesey's farm on 4th of July with Jerry in 1990 by the fire, and he smoked his very first bud out of a glass pipe, and we had a conversation about it. And we talked at that moment about the importance of cannabis and community. And I feel like that would like really settled in me, and it made me know, like, yeah, this is where I need to be. And it was the weed that I was swinging too. So I just, you know.
So,
Oh shit!
I think there's Grateful Dead, there's the Snodgrass family, there's Oregon Country Fair, which started in the 1969, which was to create a new a new world that doesn't rely on the regular system. And you know, the Quakers also did amazing things in the world that came out of California and did different things, and we just
the Rainbow family. Don't forget the Rainbow family. It was so fun bringing people together. I want to mention that the way that I met Sam, Skunk Man Sam, this is the Grateful Dead. Way back in the day in the 90s when I was a young advocate, somehow I got into this popular magazine, and his business partner saw it in the Netherlands. And in the article it said, "Oh, Debbie's on Grateful Dead tour. You'll always find her in the parking lot." So Mike came and found us right in the Grateful Dead parking lot.
Debbie, where I met you, was on Telegraph Avenue.
Oh, that's right. I met you even earlier. Oh, my God.
That's right. You were sitting at one of those can booths.
I was on the corner of Telegraph and Channing Way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I took you
pulls up in his car. I mean, if you've met him, you know, he just got in his car. Next thing I know, we're taking off to this Japanese kimono shop. Yeah, where they have these traditional hemp kimonos that were on display. They're glorious. He wanted me to see it. I couldn't even believe how beautiful they were. This is in the early day when there was no hemp products, and suddenly we're in Berkeley looking at these beautiful hemp kimonos on the wall. Oh, I forgot about that. We go even way, way, way back. But I remember Michael finding us on the Grateful Dead lot. He gave me two things, just pops out of the blue like a very shaman.
Michael was a serious deadhead.
Yes.
I saw them 4 or 5 times. Mark, what was the first year you saw the Dead?
77.
77.
Yeah. And then 78 saw Garcia band. And then my first Brent show was the 4th show I saw in 79. And then yeah, man.
See,
what a long, strange trip. I was 14 years old.
Which was real near to Ken Kesey's farm up on the summit.
Where did you see him, Skunk Man? What did you say?
In Veneta?
What did you say?
Where did you see him?
Was it in Veneta, Oregon?
No, not in Oregon. It's when he still lived near near Summit Road in Santa Cruz, California.
Oh, I see. Down by the La Honda property.
La Honda. Correct.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my first show
Big up
was
for
in,
Jesse on BioVortex. I'm pretty sure his family's still in that zone.
my first show was Alpine Valley, 1986.
That was my first show. That was my
No, that
first show
was
too.
my first show.
Oh my God, I'm outing right now. Hyped up. Alpine Valley, 1986.
Trouble Ahead, Jerry and Red. I remember the show well. Yeah, it was about to crash,
I have a
right?
super quick story about that. First time I ever took mushrooms, I went with my friends. I didn't have tickets. I lost my shoes. I lost my tickets.
On the way
on the way into the event. I lost my friends for the whole weekend. I was miracled all 3 days. Somebody gave me a pair of shoes, and I helped this awesome couple sell vegetarian chili out of their RV, and they gave me a place to sleep. I was like,
California?
family, I am here.
And then on her way out, on the third day, she finds her friends hitchhiking on the way out and doesn't see them all weekend.
That is an awesome story.
Did you guys
I guess
go
I'm the old dude.
the night before when Bob Dylan and Tom Petty were touring with the Grateful Dead at the time, and we went the night before. They played at the Hubert Humphrey Dome in Minneapolis. Then the next night was a Saturday night, and the Dead said, no, Alpine Valley is our own gig. So Tom Petty and Bob Dylan played the night before the two Dead shows in '86. And so did you guys camp out for that? Most of us were just out in the parking lot. No one bought tickets to go see Tom Petty or Bob Dylan. I mean, imagine that, right?
Yeah, I didn't, but that was in Milwaukee. Didn't they play a gig in Milwaukee the night before?
No, they played at Alpine Valley the night before the Dead played. And the Dead refused to split up their shit. They're like, no, Alpine Valley is our gig. And it's funny because at a couple stops along that tour, and '86 was a great year, except Jerry getting sick, right? The Dead actually warmed up for Petty and Dylan. So when we saw them in Minneapolis, the Dead went on first and played one long set, which was very unusual for the Grateful Dead. Didn't warm up for anybody, right? But this is Tom Petty and Bob Dylan, so it was a big production. So a lot of people actually, after the Dead got done playing in Minneapolis, they just packed up, left, didn't even stay for the Bob Dylan Tom Petty show. We stayed for Bob Dylan Tom Petty, but then drove through the night. And the next night, Bob Dylan and Tom Petty played at Alpine by themselves one night. And then the Dead played the next 2 nights, which was great. Those shows were fantastic. Recordings of them are wonderful. But yeah, Trouble Ahead, Jerry and Red. He was about to get sick.
You can't sell grilled cheese parkets in the parking lot of a Tom Petty and a Bob Dylan show. Let's be real.
You'd probably get busted for smoking weed you can't record see, that was a big thing too, is that Bob Dylan does not allow recording, and the Grateful Dead allow recording. So it was the taping section. It was a big thing at those shows. There's very little, I guess, recorded stuff of some of the Dylan stuff because he didn't want people recording. But as you know, kind of going with the Grateful Dead business model we were discussing before, they let people tape their shows. And through those tapes, they became the most recorded band in all of human history. There's more Grateful Dead recordings on this planet than any other band ever. And there's no way anyone could even come close, because if you think about it, all the people who taped, then there's second generation, third generation, there's so many copies, people's cassettes probably getting moldy in their basements, but the most recorded band in all human history.
One thing that's really cool about that is all those tapes and everything that was done on an honor system. No person was ever allowed to sell
open source. Like Kelly said, open source. If you
caught someone selling a bootleg in the fucking parking lot, they might as well go move to fucking somewhere no one can.
They were like a narc.
And also about narcs, like the one great thing about a Grateful Dead parking lot is you could score the best weed, the best mushrooms, the best acid, whatever good good thing that you wanted that was from family. And if there was ever a cop in the parking lot, there was some guy 20 feet out in front of him going,
Yeah.
narc, narc, FBI, narc, this
Yeah.
guy's a narc, and they would never
It's
do
a,
it.
it's a
Dicks
great
up.
excuse when you do get in trouble. Sorry, where did you get that, son? We're trying to draw out your sword. Oh, I bought it on the parking lot of a Grateful Dead show from some hippie in a tie-dye. Oh,
No, I always tell them I got it from this cop, dude. He's right over there. I'll point him out.
yeah, I bought it from an undercover cop at a Dead show.
Not even an undercover, fully in uniform. It was him right there. I'm telling you right now.
When I saw one of my first Dead events, it was an acid test in Los
Holy
Angeles.
shit.
LSD was still legal.
So which acid test were you at, Sam? The
I was
Watts?
on one on Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, so was that the Watts acid test?
No, Watts was, I was around there too, but I didn't hang out long. I visited and then I left.
Yeah. So Jerry Garcia talks about the Watts acid test in the movie, right? So in the movie, he recalls
A whole
that, I
lot
guess,
of soul people got their souls really, really electrified.
Was it the Fillmore acid test, skunk man?
No,
Was it
you're
a
talking about, the one I'm talking about was right on Sunset Boulevard. And
Yeah.
you walked in and they had a big bowl of Kool-Aid. And you took 1 cup of Kool-Aid and it cost $5 to get in. I mean, it cost nothing.
Well, $5 was like $50 now, right? I mean, right? I mean, $5 back then, right? That's actually a lot, right?
You got breakfast though.
Yeah, but they gave you a cup of acid also.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
We can get Carolyn Garcia on here to tell us everything there is to know about this, and it would be really
She
cool
would love to
do that. And everyone should know about Mountain Girl Botanicals if we're going to talk about Grateful Dead and cannabis, because she
I always liked her book, The Primo Plant.
We were going to have her on Hash Church. Do you guys remember that?
Let's do it again.
Well, she's asked us. She's been like, "You remember that time?"
No, listen, I know she's thinking about it because, listen, she literally called me out of the blue one day, and I don't know her. She's like, "Hey, what's up? You know, this is Caroline. This is Mountain Girl." And I was like, "Oh, hey, this is Bubble Man." She's like, right, yeah. So when are we going to do that Hash Church? Like,
Well, Josh and Kelly, break it down for the audience who Mountain Girl is. They may not know who that is. It's sort of a code name. Right,
so, I mean, Mountain Girl is Carolyn Garcia. She was an amazing woman who was on the scene at the time, and she has a daughter named Sunshine with Ken Kesey.
A love child in the early 60s when they went down to Mexico to step out of the whole regime of the United States. So they went down to live and join a whole new culture of alternative.
On the legal run.
Yes,
exactly.
And then got together with Jerry afterwards and had Annabelle and Trixie, amazing ladies who are in the community now doing incredible work. Annabelle's an amazing artist. Trixie does amazing work all over the place.
Another friend of mine in California's father was a judge that sentenced Kesey for that crime.
Wow.
That's why he was on the run for.
Right.
You know, amazing things were happening.
His son was a stone cold smoking head.
You know, honestly, I think that we can almost just let Carolyn describe herself because we're going to be down in Oregon here really soon. And we'll just the problem she was having was with technical difficulties, and we can just help her out with that and have her on with us. She would love it.
I will
she
say
wants
that
to do this.
Her father was a botanist. She grew up, you know, loving gardens and loving cannabis. And she's always been a person who just really soaks up information. And that's what we really love about her. She's
an incredibly intelligent woman.
And she did write one of the first cannabis growing books in 1976.
It was a very outdoor organic growing type book.
You frozen up here or what?
Or, you know, maybe we continue to talk about how we're recreating history.
We're going to be in Eugene actually in a couple weeks. We could get Bob Snodgrass and Carolyn Garcia in the same room, and we could do a hash church.
I think that would be super cool.
Bob Snodgrass used to come out on hemp tour with us in the day, touring around and doing the hemp festivals, in addition to the fact he was on Dead Tour. But yeah, we took him out with Jack Herrera and LV Musica, and they hit the road doing college campuses and big cities back in the day.
Debbie, where were you living in '86 for that to have been your first show?
Oh, because I was a college kid in Illinois. I was thinking 86, smoked weed for the first time, first Grateful Dead show. And believe me, the LSD and the VW bus were just minutes behind. Yep. Yeah. So I was Illinois. Yeah. How about you? Are you Midwestern?
Yeah, me too. I was going to Lake Forest High School in Illinois on the North Shore. And after that show, I got grounded for an entire month because I was like 17 years old. I was supposed to be babysitting like at a lake somewhere and fully lied. And, you know, it was worth however many months I was grounded for, it was worth it.
I was in Michigan Tech in the UP. So for us, it was maybe like about an 8-hour drive, but it was like our closest shows. I saw them in Madison, the Dane County Arena. I think they played in Madison, and also saw them in Poplar Creek. I want to say that was like 84, maybe in Poplar Creek, but that was like suburban Chicago. But it was also at Brent's Tinley Park, which is just outside Chicago too as well. So, and a bunch of Soldier Field shows. I asked my wife to marry me first night of Soldier Field.
Was that the one that Sting opened up for him on, and they had the big thunder and lightning storm?
They had to clear the whole main floor. It was exciting.
No, that was in '93. Sting was '93, right? They were rolling with the Dave Matthews Band was the warm up. It's crazy, right? They had some crazy warm ups. But yeah, it was Traffic in '94, Sting in '93. Steve Miller in '92 and Santana in '91. That was such great years. We really didn't know how good we had it.
Dave Matthews was pretty killer in '93, '94, '95.
95
he had a raw, Under the Table and Dreaming came out in '95. And I remember being on Fish Tour in like '93, '94 on the East Coast. I did the Halloween show in '94, and I did like the Bangor, Maine, where they did the 30-minute tweezer. And I did like a Syracuse show and some other ones, but I got turned on to Dave Matthews out there.
So we were at some same shows together, and we didn't know it, did we? We didn't know each other.
I mean, no, we must have though been at the same shows together.
Right. You know Henry Schwab, right? So were you rolling with those guys? Then?
Well, I knew Henry, you know, I would always go see him at the water wheel table and whatnot. But dude, I was traveling in India. I was at the Kumbh Mela, the Maha Kumbh Mela in Haridwar, India, in like seriously in the north. Like,
these were your dready years, right? You
20, yeah. 20 kilometers away from
probably,
Rishikesh.
Probably.
But listen to this. This is super trippy. I bumped into Henry. Like in a tiny little restaurant, I was sitting at a table. There was like 3 tables in this whole little place. And I look beside me and it's fucking Henry. And I'm looking at him like, I've never seen this person outside of the Fish Water Wheel Foundation table, like ever. I don't even think I ever saw him in the crowd. And I seen him a lot. And he was sitting next to me. And while this was happening simultaneously, the 2 people that we were traveling with were doing it with each other as well. They had traveled Asia together for 10 years. The guy I was traveling with, Alex, and the girl he was traveling with, they knew each other. Me and Henry knew each other, but we didn't know, like Alex didn't know Henry and I didn't know the girl Henry was traveling with. It was super trippy. At least as psychedelic as high as I would be when I would see him at the table and like have a 20-minute conversation with him or whatever.
Were all 4 of you there for the Kumbh Mela?
They were not there for the Maha Kumbh Mela. We told them about it. The girl knew all about it. And Henry was just like, dude, I'm just trying to, be somewhere other than a fish show.
So, it wasn't until Jerry died that we decided, wow, we could probably move, because we would have never moved while the Grateful Dead were alive. But Jerry died in '95. And we were working and doing midwifery and herbalism and building. And all of a sudden I got a job building 2 yurts in Nelson, BC in 1998 in May. And we went into the Holy Smoke Shop and smoked hash oil in town.
Dude, off the mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Dude, listen,
Yes.
those are my boys. Paul
Wayne brought us in. Yeah, here you've got to meet my friends upon opening our VW bus for the first time in BC.
That's Paul D, Alan Middlemiss, Dustin Sunflower. Yes. Amazing people. The first time I went to the Kootenays was in the early 90s, like 91. And I hooked up with those guys and we went and like prepared organic soil and mixed our own soils. And we went and dug holes in the mountain and we planted plants. And it was my first time growing outdoors and it was really their grow. But I was just happy to help and be with them. And they were just such an amazing, they are such amazing people. So shout out to all of those guys for being such good folks. They also, we shared a booth at a psychedelics conference in Whistler and where we actually met Finn McKenna and Paul Stamets came by and hung out. It was just this really super cool little mini psychedelic event in Whistler, BC of all places. But I did it with the Holy Smokes guys. We shared,
and then they went on to Dustin Sunflower had, shows on the radio every Sunday. I mean, the amount of intelligent exploration that happened here in Nelson, BC then and still now is truly phenomenal. I mean, Nelson BC is an amazing town.
Yeah. I mean, pioneers of the mop-up trip.
Yeah, I mean, people came here, to draft the Dodge the draft, whatever it was called, and learn how to survive and grow weed. And it's a potent group of people up here.
And we always say now at the time that we came in, in the late 90s, that we came up as cannabis refugees because so much, there was guns happening in Southern Oregon and in Northern Cali. And, we were a big time part of the cannabis industry at that time. And we had just had, a small child and we thought, we could go up there, we could do our craft, we can grow outdoors in nature and really continue to make medicine without all the heavy artillery and the heavy energy. So to come up here to BC and then become Canadian citizens, as a cannabis refugee it's an important part of our story because we really felt like following the medicine and growing and cultivating the best medicine that we could.
I feel like it was those Grateful Dead years and those psychedelic years and those herbalist years of gathering mushrooms and being in the wood, it was church, it set up a dedication that is going to be set in our souls for the rest of our life. And it's been set in our lives before. We feel like it's been set in our lives in the future. And coming up here allowed us to really embody that. And
100%, man. Yeah. That whole psychedelic thing was important for me as well. I went to the school of, originally I was into all these different sort of conspiracy novels and I liked Robert Anton Wilson and that sort of led me into Terence McKenna. And once I got the Terence McKenna, Esalen Institute, recordings with Rupert Sheldrake and Ralph Abraham from the mid 80s to late 80s, I was very, very, very stoked on that at a young age and started, macro dosing the 5 grams dried and ordering spores from Terence and Kat in Hawaii and growing our own, I guess it was the Sigeny.
It's important to make note that Vancouver and British Columbia has an equal importance as the stuff that's happened in Oregon and California. And it's almost like what can't happen there happened here and what can't happen here happened there. And somehow they're both balancing each other out to become the better situation. So we've really appreciated being able to, we're basically a product of British Columbia and Oregon at this point. And it feels really good to be able to just embody what's right as a human.
Yeah, and the Canadians just always pushing the envelope up here to make way and headway for what's been going on down in the States. And like Josh said, vice versa. So big ups to the Canadians.
Big up to radical human beings.
I guess we'll just extend
big up to radical human beings on the earth. We love you.
Yeah, and I also, got an awesome chance to be able to meet Terence McKenna too when I was in Kealakekua Bay. 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 days in a row. And it sort of took me on the second day, like, wait, this is Terrence McKenna. I recognize his voice, from late night radio before there was internet. We used to listen to the super late night radio, and he got to download, hours and hours of what he was up to at that time. And it really sent me on a whole new journey to be able to convene with his energy and where I really wanted to go in the world. So again, I know we're all big up in Terrence, but I'm going to do it again.
Well, he's amazing. And, when we started growing commercially here in 99 outdoors and started seeing the outdoor British Columbian genetics and growing the white grizzly from the Kootenays really allowed us to see a lot of different genetics. And we recognize now that we had autoflower genetics happening in there. We had haze genetics happening in there.
Amazing hash genetics, that Nepali strain that people talk about. Marcus, I know you remember that one, that Nepali Nepalese people called it. It was incredible, beautiful hash strain.
One of my favorites from the Kootenays from back in like that 91, 92 era was called the A1 Magenta. If you ever see Dustin or Paul, ask them about the A1 Magenta. I'll tell you, that was a special plant.
And forever British Columbia was locked into one strain, and I know that it's beyond that now. And you hear about it in Brazil, like, oh, that was back in the day when it was all Thai and skunk. It's changed now. And I'm like, well, here in British Columbia, it may have used to all be rocks that was been sold, but I do see a lot of people making a big switch to just exploring strains, and I like to see that here in British Columbia. And I think it's a tide that can't be changed now, and that the world has awoken to cannabis as a chemovar or as a phenotype, and I'm really excited that we can move beyond that.
And all of our hard work that we've put in as cannabis community before now can really relate to everybody in Canada that can grow their 4 plants outside, that are going to finish outdoors. No matter where you are in Canada, you're going to have beautiful finishing outdoor genetics that when you experience this medicine, you're going to have a really good experience. And we're huge advocates for everybody growing their 4. So, big ups to all of the cannabis community in Canada that's been breeding, since the 80s. We're even standing on the backs of giants that, we got the genetics from the elders, at that time were in their late 70s. And then we took that breeding and then bred for another, 20 years that we can now pass on to regular people that are growing their 4 plants. And that's just an incredible stride.
I'd like to also challenge people to grow 4 food plants, and maybe even more. So with your 4 plants, take that opportunity to grow food along with it. And let's take on the whole idea of victory gardens, or the whole idea of us all having a little bit of food grown, so that we can live in an abundant culture and an abundant society rather than the scarcity one.
And we want to see your big ganja colas, but we also want to see your big massive zucchini too.
Or your holy basil growing underneath.
I feel like part of the regulation that you guys just brought up is being able to cultivate at home. Like it's a right for everyone, and everyone should be able to be in touch with their medicine and understand how the plant works, and then see like sprout a seed for the first time, plant, like make a bunch of mistakes, like water too much. Like this is the most important step toward like yourself making a medicine. And this is beautiful. And one of the things that we have to fight still a bunch in Brazil, unfortunately, here we have 60 people growing weed legally in Brazil. Not even 50 something.
Yeah, 50 something.
That they had to apply, they had to go individually in the justice to fight for themselves, say, I have a condition and I'm planting weed already, and this is good for myself, and then they get good law, but it's just not a thing here. And how beautiful it would be if everyone could grow their own 4 or their own 6, like in California, outdoors, like people could see it. We wouldn't have this amount of like indoor grows with a bunch of like crazy electrical, like, I don't even know how to say that in English. Like when you, like, yeah,
everything.
when you
the
get
fire hazard.
very poorly made electrical like grows that are dangerous for a house, that can put up a house on fire sometimes, because that's what we see here. So it would be beautiful that if
you grow 4 plants outdoors, you should be able to get 8 kilos cleaned and dried.
You see it?
I would also like to say you could have 4 root stocks and graft other strains onto it. So you could potentially, let's say, have 4 different strains on one root stock and still be
No, you can have 25. I've had 25.
I love it.
There you go.
Awesome.
Of course you have, Sam. Of course you have.
We had 30 once, but I don't want to talk about it right
He's
now.
just kidding. We do not.
I just,
What is the
I
current
saw that Italy
regulation
just
in
legalized for
Brazil
plants at
today?
home. Just randomly, Italy. I didn't even see that one coming.
wow, 4 plants in Italy. Good for
Yeah,
that.
the entire nation. Yeah.
I do want to hear a little bit more about the 25 different cultivars that you grafted onto a plant, though, Sam. What's that all about now?
Well, first what we did was we just tried grafting, and that was successful. So then we put 2, and the next year we did 10, and the next year, the most I ever put on one rootstock was 25. But one thing you have to do is you have to make sure your rootstock is later maturing than the grafts that you're putting on it. Otherwise, the whole plant dies before the final plants are done maturing branches.
Timeline-wise, would this have been after the publishing of Marijuana Botany?
Oh yeah, because I didn't move to Holland till after Marijuana Botany.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure if you did some of this in Cali or whatnot. So.
No, I did a little bit of cloning in California. I wasn't a big believer in it. I thought that if you made a copy of a copy of a copy, it suffered from Xerox effect, which I found out not to be true.
So were you grafting skunk 1 through skunk 25
Yeah,
on
like
that?
what was your graft plan, and then what were your vitals?
I was grafting both male and female branches onto a late maturing rootstock. A lot of times I try to use hazes as the rootstock because they're later maturing than any of the grafts that I put on them. So I just wanted the grafts to finish before the rootstock died.
That's super smart. We were having a really amazing
You're breaking up. I don't know if everybody's hearing you break up, but
I heard it was breaking up for me too.
One of the things that was good was when people had a plant in it, like here in the Netherlands, you can grow 5 plants in your balcony or something. Okay, well, if you've got 5 plants and each one of them's got 20, 25 different genetic branches on them, then you actually are keeping a library of 100 plus.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Sorry, I was just typing to someone in the.
That's quite all right.
Yeah, well, it was Jan from New York. You might have even met him before, but he said he's glad Sam clarified the copying, the cloning does not decrease potency. He said it doesn't, but if your plant is plagued with virus, fungi, and microbials, and it's been impregnated with thousands of these, it can appear to be that way. And I think that's where that whole like, oh, it's genetic drift.
Oh, no, that's absolutely true. If they pick up a viral load or a fungal load or a bacterial load, then their yield and vigor can be greatly, greatly reduced. Absolutely true.
Hey, Marcus, could I ask the girls from Brazil just a quick question?
100%.
And exactly, so what is the regulation in Brazil? You know, Brazil is a very large country with large cities and a large economy and large natural resources. And certainly the presence of industrial agriculture is all over the place down there. So where is the law in Brazil? Like, can you possess, or can you have, or do you go to jail, or is it municipality dependent? And like, what advice would you give tourists who want to go down there and get high?
For tourists wanting to get high, it is It is very tough to find like good quality cannabis or hash in Brazil. You need to be very close to like a specific niche. Instagram helps. Like if you're a tourist and you're a stoner and you get in touch in Instagram, it helps. But the legislation in Brazil, you want to talk a bit about the legislation?
Yeah, you will not. It's not a criminal offense to have under 20 grams, to possess under 20 grams if you're white.
Like
That's
it's
the truth.
Everything has to do with how the police officer that gets you interprets the situation. So our drug policy, unfortunately, opened up the room for a bunch of like racism. In fact, like for the interpretation of the police officer to be whatever is going to come out for that situation. If he interprets as like drug trafficking, or if he does not, or if it's just like drug use, you just sign up and then you have to like present yourself in the court and then you have your first offense, but then it's your first. But it all depends on your color.
It depends on your color, and also on like everything. It's like it's bias. So if the police officer or if the judge, so there are judges now who are ruling in favor of people who present cases, as we talked, the 50 people who can legally grow cannabis in Brazil medically, who have presented cases. So it is changing. Like the federal law is that it's not a criminal offense under 20 grams to possess. You cannot grow, but as Alice says, that's the federal law, but it depends on the interpretation. Tourists, Brazil, it has a lot of prejudice. So if you're a tourist with money and you can buy off the police officer, you probably might not have a problem. But that's,
I mean, it's hard for you as a tourist, for you as an American person.
They don't speak English.
Yeah, for you to get caught on the street, you know, like they won't choose you, you know.
Probably not.
Since a bunch of it is a racial thing, like our drug policy is like a tool to criminalize specific people. And I mean, I know it's not new. I mean, it's something that came from America too. In America, like in the United States, it was like that too. But definitely in Brazil, that's still ongoing. I feel like we are still signatories of the war on drugs, and we're like years back.
Yeah, it's
you know, like we're a few years before.
Do you think like a regulated industry, kind of like in some ways like the way medical starts first with, you know, addressing, you know, patients again whose lives are basically, these people are alive because of cannabis, that there'll be programs like that? Or do you think that there's still just such a bias against it, just a stigma that it's drugs and all drugs are bad?
It is happening right now. Like since we're like legalizing medicinal cannabis, like with many like this, there is a bunch of like big corporations that are like now, not only big corporations, but like pharmaceutical industries. They're very interested in producing cannabinoids for this specific kind of like medication. So it is going to be a big like suit egg business, because in Brazil that is a huge thing. And once they realize, especially with hemp, like once they make it with hemp in Brazil, DEM, we need you guys here. Like we need you guys here for you guys to teach people how to make it sustainably, because in Brazil people don't grow sustainably. They grow like big.
Yeah, but I think the first step will still be medicinal, because that's what's happening. That's what has happened with the health agency, and that's what's happening right now in our chamber of deputies. So like I just interviewed two of our
deputies from
Brazil in Uruguay, who were studying the Uruguayan kind of regulation, and they are going to Canada in February to study that too. And we are talking here about medicinal cannabis and growing in Brazil, and they are thinking about research, growing, importation, exportation, but everything attached to some kind of medical treatment. So hemp might come along. It hasn't happened right yet, the movement for industrial hemp, because I think the lobby of other industries is very big here. But for medicinal cannabis, I think that like the next 2 years, we are going to see a big movement.
But did it happen in Brazil the same way? Like I picture it happening this way, which is, you know, the way cannabis works. It's slow but sure. It's going to change the way people think. And generally, the way I saw it happen down in the U.S. was they fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it, and then they kind of were like, oh no, they're finding out about the endocannabinoid system. They're putting all these things together, and then it was like epileptic children, and it was kind of like the last leg on the table of like prohibition being able to keep this from happening. Like, how did it happen in Brazil? Was it sick children?
That is what's happening. Like all of this, like individual approvals are called habeas corpus that these people have to grow weed like legally in their places are like sick, most of them sick children, or like moms that have like proven that they were giving already like illegal like RSO for their kids, and still they were improving a lot and not taking like the anti-epilepsy medicine.
Do you see, that's the displacer. That's the one where they're all sitting down going, okay, boys, like we're going to have to figure this out. This isn't going away. I'm certainly not going on the news and telling everyone that that kid can't have its cannabis. And so that's how it starts. And then they think they're going to control it. But anyone that's ever grown cannabis knows if you give weed an inch, it'll take the whole yard.
No, yeah. that's it's exactly what you said. And like the beautiful thing is we do have associations that either they are growing or they are importing the oil or they are arranging to make it come to Brazil, and they are giving this children, and they are doing better or as well as children who do have the money to import because that's another form. There are people who are growing, and there are people also like there are 7,000 licenses for importation.
But the thing is the treatment, just for you guys to understand how it's something that's extremely unreachable. It cost a monthly treatment for children costs like 2,800 reais.
In those.
That is like, no, just for them to understand, like the minimum wage month in Brazil, it's like 1,000. So it's like almost 3 times the minimum wage. So just so you guys can understand, like it's just like very rich families that can afford that. So we are like
start
like very
baby
like
steps.
Our baby steps take a long while, but we do have this increase of the cannabis community here for sure. I feel like it's a worldwide movement. People are traveling to like everywhere in South America. They're experiencing Expo Uruguay, Cannabis. They're going to the Emerald Cup. People are traveling and understanding how the cannabis community somehow can also rise.
And deputies are also starting to see the money that they can get out of it.
So for sure.
That's also something that this year for sure happened. So like we have been to medical conferences and things like this. And I have also been to meetings where like cannabis, the billionaire market, and a bunch of like white men with politicals starting to discuss studies who foresee how many billions of dollars they can profit in the next 3 years if the regulation does like this or like that.
They haven't even legalized or regulated, and the green rush somehow has started. That's somehow what has been happening.
They're already counting their money.
Yeah, yes. They're counting the money without even having the regulation.
But once again, just like Sam said, see, cannabis is going to change the way they think, and they're not going to be able to fight it. And when you have them like, well, we're not going to smoke it. We'll just be into the money. It's like, oh, still getting you. Just wait. It's interesting.
And I think that it's really important that, hand in hand, we're having the conversations that cannabis is good for you, but what is good cannabis? It's as imperative as the medicine itself. We need to be talking about what is good cannabis, and then that starts to have conversations on what is good medicine, and then that helps us question big pharma, and then we start wondering, well, what is good cultivation, and then that has us questioning big pharma, and then we're wondering, well, what is good community, and then that has us start questioning the communities that are only are fractured due to misalignment, and cannabis helps us align. So I think that these conversations need to be, being pushed forward as much as the medical has been the one that comes through the door. And then these huge polycorporatives, I don't want to say corporations, polycorporatives, then that take that lead of the medical cannabis and then make medical illegal. Like that continues to happen. It seems to be the pattern. So it's important that we keep having the conversation that this is a medicinal plant, whether you're using it recreationally or not.
Well, even in California, it's kind of a problem with the culture of medical marijuana was so much more compassionate, just the way we thought about it and the things that we did in our facilities and the way that we gave so much of our cannabis for free to people that really needed it. And we really empowered people who were sort of at their lowest. And now it's kind of a pain in the butt to get your medical card, and the two-tier system is kind of weird. And so many places have just stopped dealing with two tiers, including our members. Now they're coming into our place even though they could go get their medical note and gain some extra benefits. It's just too much of a hassle. They come in under the recreational hat, and it is a different vibe when you put that hat on, for recreational or personal use. So I'd like to figure out how we still talk about medical in our facilities and how we still keep that a driver of what we're doing. I mean, obviously in places like South America, Brazil, it's still what is happening, and they're still at square one. So I'm curious, how do we prevent medical marijuana from falling by the wayside all of a sudden? And
I would say that John Conroy here in Vancouver, BC, is dealing with Canadian law, but John Conroy has put up incredible discussions and court cases to support compassionate care. So really, we just need to continue saying the word compassionate care as a group, because in Malaysia, you would never think that it would ever be legalized because it's the death penalty. But over the last year in Malaysia, a person brought it to the Supreme Court to be able to legalize medical marijuana because he got in trouble for providing cannabis oil to terminally ill patients. So just like you said, here's a country where it's a death penalty, and this person is giving compassionate care to terminally ill patients, and now they have to recognize it. Now they're going to go through their whole own process, creating laws around it, rather than get help from the U.S. or something. Malaysia's going to do their own thing, but it's opening the doors for Thailand. And so Thailand is creating their medical marijuana, and we have good friends in Thailand who are working on regenerative projects who would be interested in coming on Hash Church if we want to hear their story. I would love to hear someone in Thailand.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing work over there.
Dude, that shows how strong cannabis can change your mind when Malaysia considers that shit. If anyone's ever flown into Malaysia and seen the big death sentence, we're going to kill you if we find drugs on you signs, zero tolerance, for sure, we're really going to do it. We're serious. You better not have it, to, well, maybe we'll allow a medical system. It's
Thailand and Laos are both really pushing the envelope for Southeast Asia.
But it's a really interesting collide. Here we are again, Indonesia. It has death penalty. It really follows under a very strict Muslim regime for that whole entire country. But I've gone into the Aceh region and set up in Sumatra, and that's where a lot of the Indonesian flower comes from for all of those regions and areas. And we set up a free clinic right after the tsunami, and we weren't just working with women and children at the time because we were the first boots on the ground.
And that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, so we were dealing with patients of all kinds, people who hadn't seen any medical care since the tsunami had come at all. And I was really surprised to see every single one of the men were wearing 2-pocket shirts. And I would ask, well, how much do you smoke? And maybe they would come in with emphysema problems or some kind of lung issue. And I would say, how much do you smoke? And they would say, well, I smoke 4 of these a day and 4 of these a day. One of them was their tobacco pocket, and the other one was their cannabis pocket. And that's totally normalized as soon as you they don't know about government rules or government officials.
Well, they don't care, but they know about it.
It doesn't mean anything to them.
They were an autonomous region.
They're an autonomous region, and their culture has always kept cannabis as a part of their medicine, and they use the language this is for my fun, which would be the tobacco, and I use this as my medicine to get through my day. And they were keeping that culture from their great-great-grandparents, and they were telling me that those varietals that they were growing were from their great-great-grandparents.
And that might be some, you know, unadulterated or non-contaminated land races in northern Sumatra still because of the drug war. So that's a potentially good spot for unique cultivars and cannabis.
What do you know about Aceh flower, skunk man?
I know that Aceh, I will say, is spelled A-C-E-H, Arabic, Chinese, European, and Hindustani, and that's really interesting.
What's the name of that lake with the island in the middle of it over there? Toba, yeah. That's some of the first cannabis that I saw in Indonesia. But I knew people who were taking Thai seeds in the early 70s to Lake Toba and growing in Lake Toba Westerners. And I know people who are doing it in Bali also. So to depend on those being a pure variety, good luck, Chuck. I mean, jet travel has made it so that all genetics are everywhere.
Agreed, and they even say in the historical accounts of the weed coming to the Aceh originally came from India. So, you know, whatever. That was, you know, they say 300 years ago.
The seeds that I saw were bigger than most normal Indian seeds. They looked more like almost like a Yunnan or a really big Thai seed. But
ones that I was dealing with in Sumatra, you know, because you had to sift through so many seeds, were teeny, tiny, pure black seeds on really tall, like long blooming sort of, you know, thin leaf structured plants. That's all that I saw when I was in Sumatra.
You guys, I want to introduce you to Danny, who works with me here at Magnolia. He got his degree at UC Berkeley, biology, studying the cannabis plant.
Nice.
Thesis about genetics and works here with us. So yeah, we're just sitting here thinking about like South Korea, you know, where it's just like it's so stringent there, like Malaysia.
And the difference is that with South Korea, right, like in Thailand, Malaysia, you've had a history of cannabis and you've had a history of, you know, for example, the left pocket, right pocket. But the thing about Korea, South Korea is like, you know, it's a stop and test state, right? Like where, you know, if they think you're on drugs, they can stop you and test you. And, you know, recently even hearsay of, you know, famous people that have been in connection with vapes and things like that have gotten in trouble. And the thing is, Korea is so stringent on their research that a lot of Korean biotech companies are reaching out to the US to actually get the research to bring back over there. But the issue is that the US has, you know, had this stall on research for so long that it's like, is that the correct channel that Korea should be approaching and coming to the US to even gather our data to go bring back to theirs? Or is it, you know, because recently, especially in the US, it's less focused on medicinal, it's more focused on recreational. And personally, I feel like that's an issue because, you know, there's so much great that the plant brings, but we don't know the opposite side effects and, you know, what's going on. So, you know, is it a proper channel for us to be taking this into Korea itself? And is there a way for Korea to start benefiting from Malaysia or Thailand's research and kind of refocus as like an Asian kind of collaborative work? Or is it better for them to kind of reach out to us and work in collaboration in that aspect?
Why not Israel?
Oh, that's actually a great point too.
One thing about Korea is that they've had a traditional hemp industry since, you know, for hundreds of years. And they still do today. They grow industrial hemp in Korea and produce hemp textiles, particularly for funeral costumes and stuff that they wear. Yeah, because we collected a bunch of them.
Yeah, I think. Can I introduce you guys to our RN too? Speaking of still having a medical focus, do you want to poke your head over here? We have an RN in-house at Magnolia 3 days a week, Barbara Blazer. So
awesome. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for introducing Danny and welcome Barbara.
Slash my mom. She's my mom.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, She started using cannabis when she was 70, so she helps the seniors. She goes out and teaches them about it and brings them in and sits down with them, and they just go through with it. And she does classes and courses and runs our wellness programs also. So.
Oh, that's amazing, Barbara. You're a very important component in this because a lot of people who are at a certain age are kind of just like scared of cannabis. They've heard all of the propaganda. They don't really want to be bothering with it. And it's really good and empowering for them to have someone like yourself who can walk the walk and share the education, and have an incredible daughter like Debbie, who's been like one of the
Well, it cracked me up, like my straight mom starts at 70, right? And this is what she does every time she wants to do it on video. So I get a text from my daughter who's like 16. Mom, I went on your YouTube channel and I found the video of grandma vaporizing. What is going on? I don't even know. I don't even know.
So let me tell you what I think I do. I think that I provide normalization for all those people who are seniors, who have been stigmatized when they thought about using it. And I now say, look, here's what I do. Here's how it makes a difference. I actually teach classes in things like enhancing your sexual experience with cannabis. Who does, look at her plug her ears.
I can't talk to mom about
that. Who doesn't
that.
want to know that, right?
Apparently your daughter.
I don't want to know anything about it. Not one thing about it.
Yeah, that's very funny because and she knows better than to introduce me, because earlier today I was just telling someone that I remember when I was explaining the facts of life to Debbie, and she was 9, and she was 9, and she just looked stunned, and I said, do you have any questions? And she said, sometimes you tell me stuff I'm just not ready to hear.
Okay. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom.
It was nice meeting you all.
We're definitely having Barbara back on hashtag. I'll tell you that much. That's, in fact, I want everyone's mom to come on hashtag. That is happening for sure.
I'll get Mom.
House church is on Mother's Day, right?
My mother as well. She worked for the Winnipeg Police for 35 years and absolutely could not even consider using cannabis without, losing her job. And now she's, I'm actually going to see her in a couple of days. She's turning 70. And just for the last maybe couple of years, she's been using cannabis just to help her sleep, go to bed. She buys these sublingual oils from one of the Canadian LPs. I think it's Whistler Medical right now, which I know they're using organic material. I know they're making water hash with that material, and then they're taking that material and making a high terpene content sublingual oil. And my mom, she's not using it throughout the day. She's still kind of a little bit afraid to use cannabis, but it makes me happy that she's less afraid, because we can laugh about it and that stigma and whatnot, but it's life-threatening. And I can tell you a story about my uncle, my mother's brother, who just recently passed away of cancer. He had asked me if I could send him some oil for him to use to try and battle this cancer. And I got 60 grams of this really nice oil, and I sent it out to him, and he got afraid. He thought that if he took it, he would lose his mind, and that he might, lose his dignity, and he didn't want to die like that. And so he got afraid, and he sent it back. And in the end, with the medicines that he had and the way the cancer took him, it really took him the same way that he was worried that it would take him. I sent the oil to a friend of mine's mother-in-law who had had some breast cancer, and she was in her 70s already. And I just saw her post it was her 74th birthday yesterday, and she was with her grandchildren. She took the oil and got rid of the cancer, and the stigma kept my uncle from taking the oil, and he perished. So keep doing the good work, get rid of that stigma, and let people know that this is something that they should not give a crap about what anyone else thinks. They should do their own research and look into it, because
what you said is really valid for what happens here. I really think that we need to talk about those people who are afraid to try something. Why wouldn't you come to Magnolia Bar and try your first one with me? It's going to work right away. You got a nurse if something happens. So it's a pretty exciting time. So thank you again.
And we based the program, or we learned it from our colleagues in Israel, going back there, where the seniors like to, where you get the cannabis at the pharmacy, but you bring it to the community center and you try it with your community for the first time, with a peer counselor sitting with you, helping you learn how to use it and ingest it right. And they're there in case you get afraid.
And I think that the end of life conversation in cannabis use is absolutely imperative, and that brings cannabis back to medicine On my mother's deathbed, I was there. I midwifed her through her death. And it was because cannabis, she was having a very difficult time. She said she was going through, all of the thoughts of her life, and it was bringing her tremendous pain. And I said, hey, let's try out the volcano. So my son got on the bed, just fully immersed her in vapors from the old school volcano. Everything changed. Everything changed. She went from reviewing her whole life and maybe some of the bad times in her life to everything that was positive in her life. And not only was she afraid to die, but after the cannabis, she was actually excited to make the crossover. And, this is somebody who, was incredibly conservative. And it wasn't until maybe the last 8 years of her life that I started to introduce cannabis to her. And she was taking more cannabis than I could ever take in a whole week in one night. Like we were calling her the cannabis queen at the end. Like girlfriend was like fully immersed with it. And in her last 8 years of life, she changed. She became a completely different person. And because of what happened on the bed in her last, moments of life, the last thing that she said to me, and it was important, it sounds like folly, but it was so important to her. She drew me close and she said, Kelly, in my next life, I'm going to smoke a lot of weed. And that was like telling me I've come from here and now I'm going to there. And it was it was something incredibly powerful, and it makes me know that I'm on the right path in my life to continue to share these stories and share good flowers, and also share healthy flowers, not only, medicine that's good, but medicine that's good for you.
And even on her death, getting close to her death, she was like, I recognize I'm going to die now. And now it's just, how do you die? How do you say, oh my gosh, I'm ready and I know this is happening and it's inevitable. How do you do it? And I think the cannabis just kind of soothed her to the point where she didn't have to figure it out. And then it happens.
Like this.
And it was just like that. It was the most beautiful, passing that anyone could ever have. And I think that it's just like, here we are again, cannabis, even creating a catalyst for the living to understand true dying and what it can be and what that crossover is, like the most valuable points of our life. I bring cannabis into births. I've used cannabis multiple times. I feel like
part of your pregnancy
it's part of my pregnancy tea, CBD, that I give women that are having a really hard time, making that transition. Maybe they've been sexually abused. So many women today that I deal with, they're saying like, 1 in 4 have not been sexually abused now in our culture. So you go through that abuse when you have to have a child, and cannabis creates this beautiful avenue to be able to deal with that, for women to deal with their fears. And it's true compassion. And it allows you to realize, oh, I can go ahead and make this with ease on my own terms. And I feel like that's like, life and death. It's hidden from us, and cannabis gives us really good language to be able to help us as a culture unveil these mysteries.
It's beautiful when you say that about women and also family. What has been happening with my family here in Brazil, it is very crazy, just so you guys understand. When I'm in Brazil, I live with my mom and my grandma. It's just women. It's very powerful. My grandma's name is Maria, which is like marijuana somehow too. My mom's name is Ruth Maria, and my name is Alice Maria. Like we all have the Maria under our names. And it's crazy because starting as an activist, I feel like we have to be an activist in our places too. Like it starts from the inside to the outside. So I broke through the stigma with my mom and my grandma about cannabis in the past, like, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 years. And now my mom dabs sometimes. She loved the puffco. Like she dabbed the cookies and cream like Marcus the other day, and she loved it. She was like, oh, this tastes good. I love this. And my grandma has been actually taking like like the oil, and I figured out that actually only the CBD does not work for her because she has a bit of depression. So it has to, like, the THC helped her out a lot. And like 1 year ago was the first time that I started like giving this to her, and I saw in her eyes, like, and in her movements and in her appetite, in her happiness, like how much it changed her in many ways. She became less grumpy. My grandma is grumpy as fuck. Maria knows it sometimes. And I feel like it changed her a lot. Unfortunately, here in Brazil, since we can't buy it and it's not an easy access, this year she stayed a few months without it. Now I have a whole setup for her. Like I can't deny, I brought from California a bunch for my grandma and my mom, but everyone's being medicated. Like it was very beautiful to see how like all these women like breaking the stigma like through family. So it is beautiful. And
you know what, it's absolutely beautiful. And sorry to interrupt, but it's what it really is it's the answer I'm giving everyone from now on when they tell me how should I get started in the cannabis industry. I'm telling them from now on, learn everything you can, go deep dive, have a personal intimate relationship with it, and then turn your parents on and your grandparents. Once you've turned your parents and your grandparents on, you are now ready for the cannabis industry, because when you go out and you tell people how you got into it, and that's your story, you're going to be listened to, because the people who have those stories to me are the most valid stories. I really appreciate them. So I appreciate you guys turning on your grandma and your mom. And that's pretty hardcore, stepping it up to my mom dabs sometimes. Holy Moses.
Marcus, when you say get people started in the cannabis industry, what do you mean by that? Because that's something I question. What does that mean?
Well, I don't even go into what it means, because it means something different to everyone. But what it means to me is they want to come to the cannabis party. They just want to come to the cannabis party. Some of them are looking at it like, I'm trapped in this job that keeps me from doing anything. I am a slave. And they see people living this cannabis life and they're like, is there a place for me? Is there a way that I can do this and do what you guys are doing? Is there a way for this to somehow eventually allow me? I think it's more attached. The people that I listen to anyway, when I read the emails, and I get a lot of emails, I can feel this passion in like a spark in their email, or sometimes they'll send an actual letter. And so I don't know exactly what it means, but to me, I'm telling people from now on how you should get started with cannabis is by having your own relationship with it, learning as much as you can, and then turning on your parents and your grandparents.
And then
we definitely, before we opened our first consumption lounge at Berkeley Patients Group, we did two things. We visited Vancouver, and we looked at what Hillary Black was doing. Yeah, and what the whole crew was doing there down there in downtown Vancouver. And we liked what Hillary did, because she had a store in one storefront and a medical center, like a health center right next door, and they worked together, and I really liked that model. And then we went to the Netherlands, right, to check out the coffee shops. We're like, we got to hybrid those two models. How do you make a totally cool place that you can hang out and smoke weed that has a vibe of compassion attached to it? So that's where we started, 20 years ago in 99 with Berkeley Patients Group, and still trying to do it here at Magnolia. I'll tell you, it's a workout these days to try and still stay tuned into that culture and that transformational experience and the foundation of why we're here, in face of the competition.
Of course. Well, that's so trippy, because I told the story earlier. I'm not sure if you heard it, but yeah, I met you like 20 plus years ago or whatever. And it was, I'm still on the same street, Debbie, and I'm two houses over from the house that I met you at.
Well, it's beautiful there.
Who were you with? You came with one.
Do you remember? I don't remember. I came up there a couple different times.
Yeah, you were with a woman. I can't remember what her name was.
Very young, super tall?
No, she wasn't that super tall.
Sama, very smart.
Maybe it was Sama.
UC Berkeley student, also just a total whippersnapper, science person.
Yeah, that sounds more familiar.
Very hippie looking.
Well, that kind of leads me into introducing Brian, who has spoken a few times, but I haven't even introduced him. And he's actually from a company called D-Nail, and I've been working close with him as well as Etienne. And I kind of switch to this now. It might be a little bit of a different topic, but when Debbie said science and Berkeley and, thinkers and super smart, I was like, oh, well, let's bring in Brian and talk about it. Because what Brian's kind of been...
Oh, super smart. Brian.
Well,
yeah, thank you.
Well, you've been focusing and nerding out on the surfaces that we take our dabs off of and the types of, composite, these different silicon carbides and these different quartzes with the different spinning balls. And you've just been going into it and kind of opening that discussion a little deeper than most. And I know Hash Church is going to end here in a little bit. And I thought we could just end it with a conversation of, how all these different, what are you doing these days with the different dab surface areas and the different, I notice you're doing all these different methodologies of getting the resin to spin around the quartz or whatever.
Do you want to talk about new stuff? Do you want to do a quick intro? This is years of my life.
No, yeah, do a quick little intro and try to fix your mic. It's crackling a little bit.
Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Well, kind of. Let's just go with it.
All right. Well, if you guys can hear me, great. Short version is when we started our work, titanium and quartz were pretty much the options. And the discourse was pretty much the titanium guys saying, fuck quartz and vice versa. No real science, no particular reason. And even worse, no one was able to interpret what data there was. So we just decided to look at all materials. Initially, we'd settled on silicon carbide for a variety of reasons. I could talk at length on that. And later we ended up settling on sapphire, which, as you've seen, has amazing flavor properties. I've got a couple of new things to show you. Yeah, that's optical grade sapphire. Those parts are phenomenal. And where we are with it now, we spent some years working in cannabis distillation, essential oil extraction, distilling by gradient, putting everything back together. So having really spent time studying up close on a molecular level how cannabis comes apart and goes back together, bringing that back to relate it to dish hardware, how oil moves across the surface with the surface adhesion, the surface architecture, the thermal properties. There's a lot going on. We're kind of refining what we call the flavor equation. How does all of this relate to our flavor? And ultimately, flavor is preservation of chemicals. Can you get them out intact? Can you get them out in the same narrow window of time intact? Silicon carbide's amazing for doing that. There's something about sapphire. We're actually homing in on translate that to math. Actually, the big thing that we're doing right now is we're trying to figure out what relevant safety tests for materials are. We just got in some off-gas tests for a new kind of quartz, and we've sent out some silicon carbide. Because what are the safety tests available for the nails? It's kind of been a he said, she said, what we're smoking on is safe, all the way back to aluminum. I remember smoking on brass pipes. I remember smoking on an aluminum bowl in a plastic bong.
Coke can?
What's that?
Coke can?
Yeah, Coke can, aluminum foil, apple, bamboo, thermos. I mean, I was a kid. We've been there.
Papaya leaf?
Not a papaya leaf. I never had one handy.
Well,
very useful. Very useful. They're hollow.
Mango, like the mango seed. Inside the mango seed, if you dry it. And
yes.
Dry it and drill it out. Yeah, and
good old-fashioned apple.
Yeah, we've been smoking off of all these random things, and today I'm finding myself asking the question: Is thermogravimetric analysis a relevant test for material safety?
I asked myself the very same thing this morning, actually, Brian.
The short version, it's fancy speak for get it really hot and see if it was any less at the end, and that's a good way to tell if anything is actually coming off. They're really sensitive instruments.
Hold on. Let me break this down.
Yeah, go ahead.
So TGA, thermogravimetric analysis, is a very sensitive pan that basically ramps up the temperature. And then what you do is the pan is basically measuring the weight loss as a function of temperature, which is a function of time, right? So if your temperature ramps up like 10 degrees a minute, you'll see basically the temperature start to rise. And if some sort of physical transformation happens to like a solid, then it turns into a liquid, and ultimately a liquid vaporizes, you would see this as a loss in mass over a period of time, because you're starting sort of with, a full gram on there, and by the time you've gotten to like 60 or 70 degrees, perhaps like a quarter of it has been vaporized because there's terpenes in there, and you're going to see that in basically a loss in mass. So TGA, or thermogravimetric analysis, is just a measure of weight loss as a function of temperature done on a very sophisticated instrument that costs about $200,000.
And would you say conducting that kind of a test on our nail materials, the stuff we're actually vaporizing off, 1000C TGA, would you say that's a relevant test for helping to determine material safety?
Yeah, well, there's two things. So in a TGA experiment, you're constantly changing the temperature. So I guess you can take the temperature to a particular temperature and then hold it there to see what it's like. Typically what you're doing is you're just looking at the thermal properties of something as it's heated up. And you're basically just looking at the loss in mass. Now,
what we're looking for is get it up, hold it there, and 100% weight the whole way through. Because if it's anything other than that, the nail's shedding something. It doesn't really even matter what it is. We want zero.
Yeah, so thermogravimetric analysis may not give you the result you're looking for, because you're going to pass through that number unless you hold it at a particular temperature. Now, I think that the example where you want to look at the impact of the nail surface on the vapor profile is something called a headspace GC measurement, right? So you want to be able to put the nail material inside a vessel that's got, the stuff vaporized in it, to now where you're measuring the amount and the constituents of what's in the vapor phase above the nail.
So you're talking about vaporizing oil off the nail and then analyzing the vapor to see if it's contaminated.
Well, I'm not talking about it. I'm just saying that you can look at the impact of a nail surface in a headspace GC measurement a little bit more in detail than you can, say, just in the TGA experiment in and of itself, which is just going to give you one number alone, which is weight loss. Weight loss is a function of time, which is, again, can be translated to weight loss as a function of temperature if you put in your temperature program file.
So for our purposes, we're looking for 1000 degrees Celsius, 0. So it doesn't matter. There's nothing being lost at 200. There's nothing being lost at 600. There's nothing being lost all the way up to 1000. That's I'm not an analytical chemist. So that was the best thing I could think of, to just go for a blanket. Is this nail going to release anything at temperature? And
see, what my interest is in knowing is what is happening how are these surfaces different? Because you've sent them all to me in the way of, well, I mean, in generally in regards to when I have them all at the exact same temperature and I drop a dab of the same resin, I notice that the terpenes are either destroyed or preserved differently from the different surfaces. And for me, I honed in on like a low temp dab off of Sapphire as being one of the most preserved, like it tastes like what I want it to taste like. And I didn't even realize how different it tasted off of a different surface at the same temperature. That's what I want to understand.
Oh, great. Yeah, there's a lot to that. On using quartz as an example, quartz is an extremely poor conductor of heat. And if you start putting oil into it, then it's going to start phase changing. You've got a puddle, and you're going to get vapor coming off under the puddle. If it's not displacing that fluid, if you don't have any agitation going on, as that vapor is created, it's going to spend a lot of extra time in contact with a higher temperature, which is going to start degrading the compounds. You're going to automatically lose a lot of your flavor, because these things with 35 Celsius boiling points, 50 Celsius boiling points, are cooking, degrading, and breaking down. Your most volatile flavors are just, the chemicals are gone.
Hey, Brian, Kelly had a good idea. Let's try you without your headphones or your mic. And if we, or is that the only mic you have? Does your computer have a mic?
Can you hear me now?
It's still pretty crackly.
I have no idea. Let me put my head closer to it.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, maybe.
I don't mind putting up with it myself, but I thought Kelly's idea was good, and I thought it could just fix that. It seems like I've had people before where they had to like play with the little little, you know, the jack that goes in for the headphones, and then it's gone away. But yeah, I'm still willing to listen, man. It's not the end of the world. It was better with headphones, he says. Okay, Jay Hendricks.
Since we have,
Is that any better now?
Not really, but it is.
Yeah, I did. We disabled all of our microphones in the house as best we could, and I went through and I specially tried to set something up for this. So I'll do better next time.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, with the work that me and Maria do, we do a bunch of like education into some stuff, and I was like wondering this last couple of days to write about like different surfaces to dead, right? We
Yeah,
have
that's
to
my
be
specialty.
yeah, we have to be a bit more like we have to talk a bit about like titanium and quartz and the differences in glass. And I was wondering if you have any material that you could send to us, like into information about that, and if there is any kind of like, I don't know if that's the word in English for that, but like the weathering of the materials and how much you use. Because what I see a lot is like people dabbing from quartz, and then the quartz starts to like, it just doesn't stay the same.
Chaz.
And
Yeah, that would be something.
What happens? Does it weather out with the heat, with the temperature? Does it releases like toxic things for us in a way? Like what happens?
So first, some of that we're trying to answer more specifically. The short version with quartz is that it's oxidizing and breaking down. At higher temperatures, it's more that the raw quartz is accepting extra oxygen. So it's not that bad, unless you're actually hitting it, rubbing it, and breaking it down. We could talk a long time. If you guys want to do a lot of education stuff, let's make sure we can contact after this, and I will just make sure all your questions are answered. And if I can't answer your question, I'll point you in the right direction.
Well, when we get a solid mic for you too, I want to do like a full show, whether it's even a hash church or just you and me and a couple other people who are interested in talking about it, because it's another.
I'll go to the store now.
Yeah, I'll go to the store now. That's awesome.
I have a question here. Are you working with the way that temperature is heating material at the same time as well as the type of surfaces that it's heating?
Oh yeah, it's
for instance, like right now, a typical battery is 0 to 60, right? It's typically not how we take breaths or inhale material, right? Like we're not just like 0 to 60 with a hit. It's a slow pull, and then maybe we're pulling a little harder at the end, or vice versa.
Right.
And how does that affect the surface area and the material and all of that trifecta kind of working together?
One of the big things that I learned in distilling is that if you have stuff that you don't want, your tar, your heavy resin, whatever degradation compounds are unwanted that would be left behind, the energy you need to vaporize is actually the energy you need to escape solution, which increases as your dab goes on. So if you have a night, by default, unless you increase either your agitation or your thermal energy, you're going to have stuff left behind. It's just trapped. So that's one of the things we're interested in. How does this all fit together to getting everything out of your oil? And one of the simple things is just raising your temperature a little bit at the end. Just the exact opposite of a torch. The temperature curve is on its way down. So either reheating toward the end or increasing your temperature on some sort of a temp control device, or accept that there's loss. And in general, to answer your question, it's a non-homogeneous substance. Time, pressure, temperature, variations within them, all of these end up creating an equation that is so highly variable, has so many different results and outcomes based on what people are trying to do, that in trying to answer even like what's better, you have to do an intake. What's better? Now how do we backtrack that to what kind of nail, what kind of oil, and what kind of technique and hardware do you use? And I love it. There's no answer to it. It just is going to keep evolving.
It's just
Right.
discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It's me. Yeah, that's the exciting stuff,
Yeah, and I do a lot of talking to people about what do you dab, how do you dab, what do you like about it, and then try to backtrack that to what kind of hardware can we make that even if we don't have a specific instruction set, this hardware gives you the option to augment your skill set to get more of what you're looking for.
Well, and it shows in the equipment, because tons of people send me stuff, and I've got the Puking Beagle, flared banger in there right now with the 2 silicone carbide spheres. It's just it's my favorite banger. It's also flared at the top. It's got this little piece of quarts, but they've pushed it up so the oil pushes out and then really flares beautifully around in here. And it's big.
It was inspired by the thin film evaporators.
Right.
When everything's actually spinning around, it's a pneumatic actuated thin film evaporator. Everything spins, the bead leaves a semi-spherical thin film of residue on the track. Highly efficient.
You sent me even some other crazy, more like a thin film, like experimental. I don't even know where it was, but it was like a heater that went around. Like, didn't you send me that one too? And then you dropped the hit in, and it was a big glass, like.
That's the falling film inspired
one. The falling film, right?
That's it's not something we've been promoting, but that one is specifically designed for people with pulmonary issues. It's gravity assisted, so you can set the lowest possible temperature and just sip it.
Yeah, I like that you guys are thinking about this stuff.
We think about a lot of things. Not everything translates to a product, but you have to think about 100 things to come up with 10 products, and 10 products to have one good one. So we think about a lot of stuff.
Well, you guys reminded me of my own company. You know, you weren't the first electric nail. You took a lot of guff, but you pushed through it and continued to be innovators. And I feel like Bubble Bags did the same thing. You know, we weren't the first bag company, but we certainly innovated, changed the game, and brought it to a lot of people.
It was thread in the chain, man. I have a different specialty and skill set than most of the people here, but it's irrelevant without all of you and everybody that came before us. So it's, you know, I'm trying to focus on my specialty, and the way we keep describing our work is we're trying to do what's not been done. If it's done, it's somebody else's job, and if it's not been done, then we can consider it. Someone has to.
Absolutely. Very good. I need to get some bubble bags over to the girls in green, actually. Remember, I made that promise, and then you guys never hit me up for that?
Yeah, I remember.
You got to reach out. You got to reach out. We'll get you guys bubbling in Brazil.
Okay, gotta send you the address.
Absolutely. It's great to be able to give bubble bags away. I'll say it's one of the greatest things ever. I've given a lot of bubble bags away over the years, and what a nice gift, the gift of making hash. Works for me too, because then generally I'll be like, oh shit, I'm going to like the middle of nowhere soon. I'll be like, wait a minute, I think I gave some guy like some bubble bags that lives in the middle of nowhere. I'm gonna have to give that guy a call. And
you gave me a set.
Well, yeah, no shit.
Gave me a set.
It's like,
Gave me a set, man.
All right, there we go. We got some
back in the day.
Got some, you know, it's good to give. It's good to give. You know who really taught me the gift of giving? Fish. Fish taught me the gift of giving. I miracled 16 of my virgin fish friends into a fish show in like 96 here in Vancouver. And it was like, I never seen such enjoyment and joy on someone's face. And I realized, wow, like giving is incredible. I want to be a giver. And so I've never looked back. Be generous, give, whether it's your time, your energy, or something else. Don't be afraid to give. What do we got? 11:47. We got another 15 minutes to shoot the shit.
I have maybe a quick thing to retouch on with South Korea.
Hit it.
Because, you know, Korean natural farming is playing such a big role in, you know, cannabis cultivation these days. And if you combine Korean natural farming with permaculture and with biodynamics and with everything, you can create a really dynamic farm. But Korea also has an incredible amount of information with medicinal mushrooms historically. And there's a lot of information that we in the English speaking world can't access, that we want to access through medicinal mushrooms. And I don't think it behooves South Korea to hold on to its information any more than it behooves the United States or any other country to hold on to its information. I think it's opening the information that makes us all better. So I think that's what we've been talking about a lot here today is, you know, the non-compete kind of aspect of feeling better on earth. You know, I mean, if we have created some laws that make sense in North America, whether it's in the US or in Canada, I think that it would make sense for South Korea to say, hey, this has made a lot of sense. There's been a lot of things that don't make sense out here. So as we've recognized, you know, our legalization has a lot of flaws. So I think that with countries that are new and they're coming on, it would be really smart for them to enact the things that are working, you know, within each system, and to allow open exchange back and forth, because the ultimate reason for a country to take on legalization would be for health and well-being. And now we're recognizing that health and well-being isn't just a product, it's the way it's made. So cultivation is the health and well-being of the earth. So we're using these cultivation practices to heal the earth, and then we want those cultivation practices to go and heal our humans through products. So let's come together with South Korea and be the most educated group of people ever. You know, I think Russia could play an amazing, you know, thing. Japan, China, there's so much information there. So that's what we have to say is free up the information for the betterment of humanity.
Well, we learned that as, oh, go ahead, Debbie.
It'd be fun to maybe get some of the greenhouse strain hunter guys on at some point to tell us what's happening in Africa, because I'm looking at their photos coming across. They're really trying to rebuild that. You know, that's long been a ganja-based society, and they're doing a lot of good work there.
For sure, absolutely. We could probably get
there's a few good family members. Potent Ponix is in Zimbabwe right now, and you know, working with some people that are doing beautiful work with track and trace, and they've worked within the cacao industry, you know, trying to support small farmers through cooperatives, and those cooperatives give them collective bargaining, which allow them to set prices rather than the market setting prices, where the farmer never sees a benefit from a rise or a lower in price. Cooperatives allow farmers to exist better. So track and trace programs that have been placed on the cannabis industry can be a really good thing. And we can learn that through coffee and cacao in Africa. You know, is a huge frontier of possibilities, and there's some amazing people in South Africa doing work. It's going to be, you know, interesting to see how that comes up. But obviously THCV and a lot of unique cannabinoids are coming out of places like Malawi, also Nigeria, also Swaziland and South Africa. So again, freeing it up is for the betterment of humanity.
It's why I always shared clones, always. And people would be like, oh, you're not supposed to share that one. And I'm like, really? Because every time someone loses all their genetics because they're an idiot and don't give them away, or share because they're an idiot, just to reiterate that one more time, and they're all crying and bummed out. And then you know what the first thing they do? If they taxed someone hard and was like, sold them a clone for big money and said, don't give it away to anyone, they say, oh, do you think I could get that clone back that I told you not to give to anyone and I charged you $5,000 for? Because I'm such an idiot, third time, I lost it. So it's like, I get it, protect your genetics, you're a big company, you spent millions of dollars on breeding, that's one thing, but like, you just have a great cultivar that you barely had anything to do with other than acquiring it, and you're holding on to it with greed. Shame on you.
It's like Calia, man.
A seed.
Oh man, shame.
Save.
Yeah, if you want to save it, give it away. And guess what? It's actually a good thing. And it's funny because I had a conversation with a local guy here in Vancouver who was pissed that I gave the Congo away to everyone. And he was like, you know, you gotta like filter and figure out who deserves this. And I'm like, everyone deserves it. And he's like, well, that's just not true. And then I'm like, well, how do you know if, say, someone that you think doesn't deserve it ends up with it, but really the only reason they ended up with it was to give it to a bunch of people who did deserve it that you didn't have access to? How about that? I stumped him on that one. He was kind of like, but just give the cultivars away if you're in a position that you can. You know, if they're not like your entire business or whatnot, if you can and you have a great cultivar, it's good to share it, more so in an envious photo shot on Instagram, but also by giving it away. I've given a lot of clones away.
Marcus or Johnny, can you tell us about your $180 gram of rosin?
Oh, I bet you Johnny's been dying to tell us about the $180 gram of rosin. Where? Oh, there he is. There he is. You no, I muted you a long time ago. Now you're unmuted. Are you unmuted? Johnny B, I can't hear you.
Am I unmuted?
No, dude, I hear you perfect.
Wow. How are you guys?
Welcome, Johnny B, my fellow Puff Wednesday host.
You know what? That was a beautiful performance there. I was so, and the thing what was so funny is the message in the morning. What do you want to do? We should do something. I'm like, laugh out loud. Why don't we try and find some legal hash, and then we'll go buy it on the black market. And we named a couple of our friends. We're like, don't fucking worry, they're going on camera. We're like, we got to figure something out. He goes, well, make some calls, see what's going on. So I called down to a couple places in Vancouver, and I'm like, yeah, no, we don't have that at all. We got nothing. They sold us some gummy bears. So I called my friend Rohan, and he's working for Burbs, and I'm like, dude, got any hash? He's like, dude, I just picked up some rosin, and it's fire. And Ro's a good friend of mine. I've known the guy for 20 years, worked with the Green Cross, sharing is caring. We always still different strains for different pains and really giving back. And he's like, you have to try this. So, of course, I call Mark, and he's like, I'm 51 minutes away. That was what came out of his mouth. I'm 51 minutes away. I'm like, I'm 47 minutes away. And we basically ran like kids to go and get this. You know what? And I mean, I do, of course, have it like right here. And I've been saving it to let certain people try it. And we got there, and you know what? Opened it up, and I guess you guys, if you haven't seen Puff Wednesdays, you have to watch it. But it was fire. I mean, I went home and tested the water activity on it right away. AW, it sat at the 55 sweet. I always say 55 fresh. It just, the terpenes were there, a good flavor. We both got really nice and high from it. I did a dab with it just right on the beginning when I jumped in. I pulled it out to do a little dab with it to get that flavor. It's uplifting. It's, I don't know if I say on the black market, does it compare? I know people and connoisseurs were looking for that killer hash or
time out. Trying to find that on the black market wouldn't be as easy as you think, because it was organic hash rosin.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah. Hung dry, organically grown, washed, pressed. That's like, I don't know. I'm going to say it's a good price.
And Johnny,
no, I wouldn't.
Well, I'm not saying, I mean, no, okay, I don't know. I wouldn't say it is, but
$180 is not
the terrible price. It's the worst price ever. It's like the worst.
What do they have to do, Marcus, to make it a good price?
Well, I'll tell you right off the bat. Let me tell you. Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you what they need to do right off the bat. So these guys at Burb, they had some really nice flowers. They have to buy it from these legal grows, but some of them, like a percentage, I don't know, like that maybe 25% that I was looking at was like, holy shit, like that's nicer than I thought they were going to have. They had it in custom jars, little glass triangular jars that were sealed, but had a down stem coming out of them, and a down stem coming out of them with a cork in it. And so you could take the cork out and you could smell all these different varieties. And it was beautiful. Trust me, any cannabis user would have walked into their front area and been like, this is nice. They were like, we don't do the iPad thing. We want you to see the bud, look at the bud. And so I said, well, are you able to, what do you do? Just sell the bud at a discount once it's been deterped? And he said, no, the regulations, we have to destroy it. And I was like, what? He's like, no, listen, we have to mix it with bleach and kitty litter, grind it, and throw it in the garbage. And because they're of this sort of connoisseur nature, and they're not going for that iPad photo thing, they want you to see it and smell it and sort of, have that experience. It costs them an enormous amount of money just to do that.
And why can't they destroy it through compost?
There's all sorts of stupid regulations set up where it screws these shops in a way that sort of locks them into basically this is it for now or nothing. So you can do this or you just have nothing. And so, of course, as we've been sort of, jamming our foot in the door of ending prohibition in Canada, because at first it was like a little pinky toe that held the door open. And now I'd say we're probably around the knee. I'm trying to get that elbow around the door and have it crack wide open, because we're still dealing with an enormous amount of bullshit. And no one is really blaming the right people. The division in the community is the people who went to start legal stores or sellouts, and that the activists who did not have the access to getting a licensing or whatnot are still like the real deal. And in the meantime, the government, who makes all the rules and is creating the division over here, is kind of the more responsible of the three for creating a system that, if we understand in Canada, our system was created in part by us telling them, no, we need this, 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 and this, and them saying, oh, well, we'll give you this, and then us coming back and saying, no, sorry, we're going to need this, 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 and this. It's in our Charter of Rights. We've taken them to court. These companies that were selling legal herb sort of lobbied at one point that, hey, maybe Canada doesn't need a grow license thing, a medical license anymore. Maybe we could just supply them. Went against our charters, and we won in court thanks to John Conroy and some other great lawyers, fighting this right fight. But it's so slow. It's just one little point at a time. The bottom line is, I'm still happy that there's a gram available. If someone has $180, they can go and try it. I wouldn't buy it personally, but I went with John. I bought a bunch of stuff. He was super happy. And it's like, don't fight against access that already exists. Just create new and better access. We don't need to, tear the system apart.
There are lawmakers still going, around communities that are trying to, affect the law here in Canada and make it. Of
course.
There are.
But there's more of us. There's more of us.
Well,
and we have the charter on our side. So and Canada actually seems to respect it.
So if you want a cheaper price, you think they need to grow a larger volume of the same high quality?
Well, I think, yes, giving licensing, allowing more craft growers, allowing more people to be a part of it, opening up the pool, letting people process, making it more available, loosen up that control over it can only be sold here, here, and here, and open it up in a way that's more like, okay, well, if you can, if you have the business savvy and you have the investment and you have the ability, then you should be able to do this instead of everyone being kept out.
I have no objection to taxes or regulations to protect the consumer. That is common sense to me. But I just can't understand $180 a gram. I mean, I understand that might be necessary at this moment for them to make a profit because of the particular structured way they're selling it. But you and I both know that $180 a gram, I mean, either one of us could produce it cheaper.
Oh, beyond cheaper. And this is for the recreational market in Canada, not the medical market by any means. Now, how everyone's in a big uproar, in the meantime, if you were to go to the black market to get such quality, you would maybe, if you were really in the know, get a $50 price tag, but more likely it would be $80 to $100 price tag, which is, even though it's half price, just as absolutely ridiculous. Because honestly, those companies and how much they have to pay for overhead and taxes and like the regulations and how it's all set up to screw them, that extra $100 is for sure burnt in that, plus more out of the second $100. The black market people are probably making a way larger profit margin because their lack of cost, their burn rate is way lower than some of these $100 million LPs that have, put themselves public on the stock market and done all these things. So I'm sort of upset with both of them. 180 is the most ridiculous, but 80 is still not affordable.
It's a similar story as in Brazil, where only the wealthy people can participate, and in that way, it's similar in different parts of the world, where they've created a system that is just so overblown that it becomes a civil disobedience just to keep going the other direction. If legalization was supposed to get rid of the black market, that isn't working yet. And if it was supposed to create access to people, that's not working yet in Canada. So I think that's where compassionate care is allowing that to happen, and we can, make it really, heady and good products still.
For sure. It is what
I was
it
just
is.
looking up expensive wines, and there's plenty in the $7,000 and up dollar range for a bottle of wine. Curious to see where we go with this versus cannabis.
When was the last time you bought a $700 bottle of wine?
Oh, 7,000 and never, and I probably never will.
Okay,
but someone must be.
Yeah, no, it's obviously out there, Marcus. But people do all kinds of foolish things. I mean, I have friends who were sommeliers, and they told me that the guys would come in and ask, "What is the most expensive wine you have?"
Because value equates
Supply
to
and
quality, right?
demand. Supply and
Because it
demand.
was all for show. It was, they were eating at a very expensive restaurant. It was a business. They weren't paying for it. So what the hell?
The point is in the lower tier, not in the 5 and 10, not in the 5 and 6. There's some very expensive stuff, but humans are capable of great things, and there is a justifiable level of effort that can go in from soil to breeding to genetics to care to produce some really amazing stuff. And I don't know anybody that's really targeting a $500 gram, but conceptually I can justify it. But it would have to be something really special, and I'd love to see that money get used to fund something better than producing a luxury good for rich people. But there's gonna be a demand. Just look at the food market, look at the liquor market, and you can see that just ultra high end, and some of it is justified in terms of the effort that goes into it.
I probably would have dropped 5 hundo on some of Sam's dry sift when I first met him. I mean, he would never sell it in a million years, but if he would have, I would have been like, look, 500 seems like a reasonable price. Just for the historical context of like, oh, so you've not only grown these plants, you actually bred them with seeds you collected in hash producing countries that you lived in. Like ding, 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 ding. Like, come on, you don't see
Historical context is one of the biggest reasons things get a high price tag. If
what I'm
Thomas
saying.
Jefferson made it, it's going to be worth a lot of money.
If you're going to pay 500, then I'm going to charge 1,000.
I
Go
knew
for
you
it.
would.
You should,
I'll
Sam.
pay it.
Charge
That'd be
$1,000
right.
and put $900 into charity. Do it.
We've
There
got
you
this
go.
thing happening in
Charity of keeping Sam happy.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Sam's brand.
Oh, I was just going to say in California right now, there's a proposal coming from some big part of the government saying that we should consider taxing cannabis more like alcohol. And I didn't even know that there was a higher excise tax on things like bourbon or whiskey. Like they actually tax alcohol on potency. So the state of California now is considering a taxation policy that changes taxation based and makes it based on potency rather than just the flat rate they have right now for cannabis. That just sounds so crazy to me. So on the table right now.
We're not proud of the $180 gram of rosin, hash rosin here in the Canadian legal market, but just keep fighting. Hopefully, I'm hoping that our company can make enough hash that the price can only go one way. Which
I've seen $150 half grams in California, Marcus.
There you go.
Were they any good?
It's out. They were phenomenal, but it's to everyone, to Sam's point, it doesn't need to be that. It just is that.
It's supply and demand. I mean, we were at the Emerald Cup, and before that was the ego clash, which was a hash cup, at the third Sam's house, and
good name.
We didn't. Exactly. I think it was named that way for a reason. I'm pretty sure. But the hash that was there is absolutely insane, and it's not just like 4 or 5 hash makers. It's barns filled with hash makers, and the level of quality there is mind blowing. And we were just talking with James at Product Earth in the UK, who has an amazing conference going up that we're going to, and he was saying when Skittles got first created, that seeds or a clone went out to the UK, and when it was grown, the ounces were 1,000 pounds for 1 ounce.
Wow.
So I mean, it's just a
Brings
matter
it
of
back to the diesel days.
just catching windows.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching all week in a walk-in freezer all week with my cousin, and like I was saying earlier, it could be expensive, but it's the process you go through can be really complex, but it can also be really simple. So there's definitely a range here that we can hopefully one day capture more people with a more affordable option that's not 150 for a half gram.
I mean, if you have 50 people producing hash, it's no longer going to be that, you know what I mean? So, but then again, strains, that's why strain specific is so
Yeah.
important. People can wash away their whole entire garden without the right strain. So those good hash strains, like Marcus is talking about, full melt, full melt certified hash strains are incredibly valuable to people. So
that would be amazing to start that program. If you guys did that, that would be.
Well, I'm involved in anything
I'd
that's
be in line.
certified, let me tell you. Because originally, back right before Mark Emery got arrested, my idea with a friend was, let's start a seed company called Full Melt Genetics, and we'll just resell the seeds that we personally have run and made kick-ass hash with. And that was the basis of the concept of the seed idea, the seed bank. Well, then the DEA just decided to step over sovereignty laws and roll into Canada wearing balaclavas and abduct and arrest Mark Emery and Michelle Rainey and Greg Williams. It was pretty scary. So needless to say, I quickly shut down the idea of starting a seed bank here in Vancouver. And when they arrested Mark, they said that he was one of the top 100 most wanted criminals in the world. He was the only one, I think, from Canada. And it was like everyone else was like terrorists and like the head of like organized criminal syndicates, and then they had like Mark on this list. It was really crazy, man, and it was super scary.
You gotta remember something, Marcus. Back then, at that time, if you were arrested and convicted of manufacturing more than 10,000 plants or 100,000, I forget the exact number.
It was $1 million.
A marijuana kingpin.
Yes.
And you could get the death penalty in
Yes.
America.
Yeah, it was $1 million, and they hit Mark with that because right before when they released the announcement, they claimed that his seeds were responsible for over 1 million pounds of cannabis produced in the U.S. And they used that number specifically because it is the minimum number in the
If I would
kingpin
have
law.
bought all those seeds, I would have grown 2 million.
Dude, I'm telling you. Still, like when Mark was supposed to be extradited and didn't know what was going to happen, and he was like, oh, I'll just take the rap for everyone. I'll get Michelle and Greg off, and I'll go down and do whatever I have to do. And I was just like, I worked for the magazine at that time, selling them just kind of freelance. But I was like, you're just going to go, you would just go down there. He's like, yeah, just wouldn't look, he was like, it just wouldn't look good if I ran. I'll just like face the music. I was like, but it's like possibly the death penalty. Like, how do you go face the death penalty? Like Mark always was kind of like balls to the wall.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Hell yeah, that's scary.
I'll never forget that article that when that came out with they hit him with everything they could think of, man. They hit him with everything in the kitchen sink too. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really was crazy. Listen, I am thinking of cutting it down here. It's 10 after 12. I got a 5-year-old that's just itching to go play in the snow. It snowed last night, so it's very beautiful and snowy out here in the Pacific Northwest. But I want to thank the girls in green for coming out. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I hope you'll come back and hang out on Hash Church with us sometime.
Yeah, just invite us for sure.
And it's just
guys. We're in like almost 90 Fahrenheit here. So I see all of you all full on power with jackets, and we're here 30 degrees Celsius right now.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Well, no, really, thanks for coming and sharing your perspective, and keep doing you, and send me a message and I'll get you guys those bubble bags. I want to thank Josh and Kelly from Dragonfly Earth Medicine, as always, for sharing such positive and great perspectives. Ones even that I learned from today. That one, Kelly, you really rocked me with that one perspective that was quite the opposite of mine. So thank you for that. And
thank you, Marcus, for the opportunity for the dialogue. We want to give thanks to everyone for being here. We really appreciate it. The people that we meet here become lifelong family members, and we really appreciate that.
And Marcus, you continue to, make me think outside of my box too. And I think that it's really important. So I appreciate you. so much.
And it's going to be minus 20 Celsius here in the next couple days. Get your guys.
Oh my God. I'll be in Winnipeg. We'll do a FaceTime in both minus 20. I bet you Winnipeg might even be minus 40 by the time I get there.
We'll do some dry sift, live dry sift in the minus 20.
That's where you do it for sure. So thank you, Debbie, for coming in as well and introducing us to Barbara, your mother, and Danny, and yeah, just showing us your new dab bar and what you're doing over there. I appreciate you, always have. So keep doing you as well. And we'll, of course, have you back to Hash Church as soon as we can as well. Yes, you were muted, but I saw you say thank you. And the thumbs up worked as well.
Thank you.
Wade, thanks so much for coming out today and sharing your smiley face with us. Always appreciate your perspectives as well. And yeah.
Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, good session. Blessed be.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll see you next week. Brian, we're going to get you. I know you already ordered a new mic.
I did.
We're going to go deep, dude, whether it's a Hash Church or whether it's just our own kind of show geeking out on this. I would like to talk about it for hours myself, and I know you can as well.
I do all day. We're focusing on publishing more, so there'll be more just reference material to go for. We rebuilt and restructured the company in 2019, so 2020 is just building on what we did last year.
And then you just fixed your mic for your last statement. You're just like, I'm just.
Oh, did this actually work now?
Yeah, there's no crackling.
God damn it. I was messing with it in the background. I was actually researching and modifying. Damn it. I don't know. Oh, there you go.
Too much. Well, you'll see both me and Johnny B this Wednesday for Hash Church. We might just whip out to Victoria and go see Jack Phillips, who was our guest last week, who spoke about the opioid crisis, getting drug users off of drugs by giving away free cannabis. And he's sort of started this really cool concept that we're going to go cover a little more in depth than just him sharing on Hash Church. And that's Johnny B. All right, Johnny B. And then we're going to say thanks to Colin for coming out over there on the East Coast. Good to hang out with you, brother, as always. And
thanks for giving me a platform, brother, as always, man.
I guess Dr. Mark is going to play us out with some Hash Church.
Hash music. Okay, let's see. We used to have a song, right?
Yeah, we did. It was like on Hash Church.
Okay, so I have to make verses for everybody who's on today.
Nah, just play your thing.
On Hash Church, we got Bubble Man. Talk about hash. Let's see. We got Skunk Man Sam. Stinking up Amsterdam. We got Josh and Kelly. Let's see, what are they doing? They always got something brewing. Let's see, we got ATN. Getting out the medicine. We got Johnny B. Using those LEDs. He's got lots to say about the cannabis plant on Hash Church. On Hash Church. Yes, we cannabis. Yes, cannabis. Yes, cannabis. Yes,
Thanks, Mark. That was the best. You guys are all the best. I love Hash Church.
Yay!
Peace out, everybody.